Good morning, everyone. It is 9:15 a.m., Thursday, May 9th, 2024. I am calling to order the meeting of the Los Angeles Probation Oversight Commission. I am Dolores Canales, Vice Chair of the Commission. Thank you all for joining us today. Commissioner Mundo is out of town today, and I am happy to be chairing this meeting in his place. We have a full and important agenda today. I am hoping and expecting for a great meeting with a full discussion, in part because the probation department did an excellent job this week getting us the information we asked for in advance of the meeting. That has been a struggle that we have commented on many times over the past 3 years, and we appreciate the big improvement this week and want to acknowledge that. I want to share that we are going to be tabling agenda item number 6 later, which is the BSCC update. The Chief Deputy is working on a compliance plan and report to present to the Board of Supervisors that was supposed to happen Tuesday, but the Board of Supervisors pushed it forward to next week. We want to be able to comment and ask questions about that plan after it is presented. Probation has also informed us that spot inspections by the BSCC have just gotten underway this week, so they have not yet received feedback about progress. We will discuss this at our next meeting, and we will still be talking about the deployment issues and how they impact staffing under item number 5 today. So if you are here to give public comment regarding the BSCC issue, you are welcome to do so under general public comment at the end of the meeting or during one of the other items if your comment applies to that issue. Also, Chief Deputy Epps has let us know that she needs to leave the meeting early today to attend a meeting with BSCC that was just scheduled yesterday. Thank you for being here this morning, and we will make sure we all get our questions in for you before you leave. And now, while we are looking forward to a great meeting today, I would like to turn the meeting over to our Executive Director, Wendy Julian, as we reflect on the 1-year anniversary of Brian Diaz's passing. Wendy.
Thank you, Chair Canales. I appreciate the opportunity to take a moment to reflect on the anniversary. I'd like to thank our partners and colleagues who informed us of the reminder about the anniversary today. I think it's telling and something that weighs heavily on all of our hearts. And I certainly want to express my profound sadness to Brian's mother, and in particular his family and friends, and the young people and staff inside the facility who are still missing him very much and impacted by his death. I thought I would take the liberty of reading a short, very short poem by one of my favorite playwrights, Luis Valdez, in an opportunity to take a quick reflection on a year without Brian and the work that we continue to do in order to prevent similar tragedies within the facility and protect the youth and all of the members of our community. I do this work because I believe in the profound connection of human beings, including all of the people who are engaged as stakeholders in every aspect of what we do, the young people, their parents, their families, the staff members, the partners, and all of us. So the poem is called In La Quech. It's by playwright Luis Valdez. It says, Tú eres mi otro yo. You are my other me. Si te hago daño a ti, if I do harm to you, me hago daño a mí mismo. I do harm to myself. Si te amo y respeto, if I love and respect you, me amo y respeto yo. I love and respect myself. Thank you for being here. It was just a few months ago, actually, that this room was crowded with public participation talking about Brian. And I'm happy to report that there have actually been some steps forward by the department and as well as by this commission in terms of how we're following up with some of the issues that were brought up that day. Like that day, today we really encourage you to participate in the meeting. We welcome comments from everyone who's impacted by probation, including people who work for probation, people who have been on probation, people who have been incarcerated in the facilities, parents, all of people. It makes our meetings better. So thank you very much for being here live today, for joining us on the WebEx today, and for listening to us on YouTube. There will be an opportunity for public comment on every agenda item and at the end of the meeting for any item that you want to discuss that's not on the agenda. The way this is going to work is that Chair Canales will present the item. There'll be a presentation, if any. We actually have a number of presentations today. The commissioners will give comments and ask questions, and then we'll go to public comment. Then we'll come back, and the commissioners can clarify or ask questions, or the panelists can answer questions from public comment, and then we'll take any vote if there is one. We are going to make sure that we get through the meeting on time today. We'll be limiting public comment to 2 minutes per person unless we have so many people signed up that we have to limit it further. But I'm not actually expecting having to do that today. And if you need translation, I'll explain later how we can make that happen. I'd like to remind the panelists to please speak directly into the microphones. Just embrace your inner Oprah. I really mean it. And I say that because it makes it able for the people who are listening virtually to clearly hear what you're saying, and allows for the recording to be better for people not able to join us right now since we're in the middle of the workday. I'd like to ask for members of the public who are making public comment, please stop speaking when your time ends. I hate interrupting you, but I will do it for the purpose of fairness and getting through our meetings. Please make sure your comment relates to the subject matter of the item and remain respectful of each other and the forum. If you're here in person, I'll let you know when you stand up and go speak at the podium. That's very easy. If you're participating on WebEx, use the little raise your hand function, which is a tiny hand at the bottom, on the bottom bar of the screen. If you're calling in, you dial *3, and that will put you into the queue. If you're on YouTube, you cannot engage or give public comment. You can send us a written public comment at info.poc.lacounty.gov. With that, I'm going to look and see what I forgot. Oh, we're recording. We're broadcasting live on YouTube. Please don't send your public comment in the chat. It doesn't comply with the Brown Act, and it won't go to the commissioners. If you want to send a written public comment, you can do so. You can even do so anonymously if you wish. You can send it to info@poc.lacounty.gov. Buenos días, bienvenidos. Ya se ha iniciado la conferencia por WebEx y en persona. Si le gustaría hacer un comentario público en español, por favor, haga clic en la imagen de la mano que está en la parte baja de la pantalla. Si está escuchando la conferencia por teléfono, tiene que marcar *3 y le llamaremos por su número de teléfono. Va a tener 4 minutos, 2 minutos para su comentario y 2 minutos para traducción. Si quiere que yo le traduzca, nomás avísame, o usted puede proveer su propio traductor. I'm going to call the roll. Commissioners, please respond when I call your name. Commissioner Carrillo will not be in attendance today. Commissioner Garcia-Lays has informed us he'll be arriving in about 10 minutes, and we'll make sure to make the minutes reflect when he arrives. Commissioner Jackson is on extended leave from the commission. Commissioner Kakani, Commissioner Lewis, Commissioner Meredith, Commissioner Mundo is absent, will return for the next meeting. Commissioner Terry, and Chair Canales. Chair Canales, we have quorum, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Wendy. Now, let's proceed with item number 2, the approval of the April 25th meeting minutes. Wendy, do we have any written public or live comments on the item number 2? Okay. May I have a motion to approve the April 25th meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the April 25th meeting minutes.
Thank you. Commissioner Kakani has made a motion to approve, with Commissioner Lewis seconding the motion. So are there any changes to the minutes? Hearing none. Oh, sorry. Okay. So are there any changes to the minutes? I'll give you guys a chance. All right, now hearing none. Commissioners, please unmute yourselves and vote with the voice vote. Thank you. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Can we please note that at 9:25 a.m., Commissioner Sean Garcia Lays has entered the room and is now present as a standing commissioner. Right? Thank you so much. Okay, so now moving on to agenda item number 3. So agenda item number 3 is a result of conversations we had at our last meeting about issues that the commission would like to continue to address through the creation of 2 ad hoc subcommittees. The attached motion creates the 2 subcommittees. 1, to address contraband and facility security, and 2, to address challenges and strategies to better work with community-based organizations, CBOs, that provide services and programs to youth and adults on probation and in the facilities. Each ad hoc committee will have fewer than 5 commissioners and will wrap up once they report back to the POC, not to exceed 1 year. Wendy, will you read the motion, please?
Yes. The motion is attached to the agenda, so it's available to anyone who'd like to read it. It says, in accordance with the POC's model of change that encourages collaboration with the probation department to receive and analyze information prior to asking questions and making recommendations, the POC finds it necessary to establish 2 ad hoc committees to further oversight work. The first is contraband prevention. For over a year, the POC has been asking questions, receiving reports on contraband being brought into and found in the facilities. This ad hoc subcommittee will continue this work, specifically learning more about interventions and/or arrests that have occurred when staff, visitors, or partners are found to have brought in contraband, to receive more information about the installation of airport-style scanners at the entrance to the juvenile hall and SYTF facility, to learn about practices for searches within the facilities, and to learn about policies and practices implemented and recommended to stop the flow of contraband into the facilities. The committee will report back to the full POC as needed. The second is probation partnerships with community-based organizations. This ad hoc subcommittee will investigate recent reports from several CBOs regarding challenges related to contracting, scheduling, background check clearances, and other issues. The committee will discuss these issues with the CBOs and the probation department and report back to the full POC.
Thank you. I will make the motion to create 2 subcommittees. Commissioners, is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Lewis. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments? Okay, yes, Commissioner Kakani?
As it relates to contraband prevention and searches, when I was last at LP, I didn't know that young folks are regularly searched between leaving the classroom and re-entering their units. And I had seen that once, I think at either Page or Afflerbach, and saw how dysregulated the young folks were after that search and like that pat down. And I get that it's probably normalized and again, normal for the young folks who are subject to this every day. But I would love to learn not just about the practices, but also any written policies related to searches within the facilities. And also if there's any opportunity to talk to young folks, if that could be included in this, because again, like I said, the young folks were wildly dysregulated after that search. They were expected to continue learning, and there was absolutely no learning that was able to happen after that search. So I think just it's important to also understand how the searches impact the folks who are being searched.
Thank you, Commissioner Kakani. That's a very good point. I also, while visiting at Barry J, saw some issues with this. So we will add in the motion to review policies. So do I need another second? Do you agree, Commissioner Lewis? Okay, great.
I don't think we have any written public comment about this item. I will say I received a very helpful, what I wouldn't call public comment, but an email from Robert Smythe from the department about his willingness to interact with the committee on part 2, the relationships with CBOs. He has actually already provided a significant amount of information about the processes for background check clearance and contracts and agreements and MOUs. And volunteered to be part of that committee meeting as we requested. So we've already taken steps forward by putting that on the agenda. So I'll just share that with you. And I'm just checking to see if anyone in the room would like to make public comment on this, or if we have anybody signed up online to make public comment.
But sorry, before that, is it possible just to make another comment on number 2? So I wanted to add that I know there is a line item in the budget for probation, I think related to like community-based contracting, or I can't remember what the exact line item is, but would also love to know the budget that probation has dedicated to community-based organizations coming into their facilities and providing the requisite programming, and a breakdown of whether or not that budget is actually spent, if it's being rolled over, because it's it's not a huge line item in comparison to the $439 million we spend on actually like running the facilities. But again, it would be important to know how those dollars are actually spent, and whether they're going to community-based organizations.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioner Kakani, for that. We have had a presentation in the past, but I think since we're going to be developing these new ad hocs, it would be good to revisit that. So do we add that in there too? So we will also add in this motion to get a line itemed budget of how much of the budget is directed towards community-based organizations. Commissioner Lewis.
We do have 2 people signed up for public comment online. Sometimes there's a little bit of a delay, so thank you for that. We'll start with Lena Mallett, and Lena, we're going to unmute you. And I don't know what we're doing with the clock today. Are we putting it up on the screen? You're going to put it on the WebEx. Perfect. Even better. Okay. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me? Sorry.
We can. Yes. Go ahead, Lena.
Thank you. Lena Mallett with the Children's Defense Fund in Layup. And I'm grateful for this motion and just want to add that I'm a bit weary of the report resulting in measures that may lead to like heightened surveillance and potential further criminalization of young people and their families. And really hope that this report isn't used as a justification for deepened investments or recommendations for deepened investments in probation departments' oppressive surveillance apparatus, especially as community has asked for a divestment investment model, and the board has virtually approved to support that. I also just want to lift up, it sounded like part of Millie's ask was to have the opportunity to be in conversation with young people related to searches and other contraband processes. So I want to make sure that that's incorporated, or at least brought back to discussion for inclusion in the motion, because that feels really important. That's all. Thank you.
Yes. It is Tanya Ibanez. Tanya, we're going to unmute you.
Hear me?
Yes, you can proceed.
Thank you. I wanted to thank Ms. Kahani for her addition to the motion requesting budget information. I do recall a couple meetings ago, I think it might have been 2 months ago, that there was some discussion about how scanners had been purchased at a great cost to the probation department, but they still had not been installed. So I don't know if that changed, but I am concerned that the scanners might only be used for visitors and not for staff. And so I'd like confirmation that everyone is going through the scanners and not just visitors. Also, there was a question about dog searches. I think that the Department of Probation is using canine to search. And again, I'm not sure if the canine are searching just the youth and visitors or if staff is also involved. So I think it's important to get some clarity on this and a line budget and a status report on the scanner is something that I think needs to be considered. I don't know if the staff have perhaps some kind of union contract that prohibits them from being searched, but given the amount of deaths and the amount of drugs that have been discovered within the facilities, I think that the Department of Probation needs to reconsider any protections that the staff might have from a search. So that's it.
Thank you. Deputy Chief Epps is going to address at least one of those questions.
Thank you. Scanners have been purchased, as you stated, they have been installed. Everyone coming into the facility is subject to the security processes for screening. That's any provider, that's all employees, including me and the chief, have to go through the scanning, the process. Any of your items are scanned when you come into the facility, any of your bags, your personal items. And any other things that are done with searches. Canines are used in the facility. There are drug detection dogs, and there are also dogs that are trained in detecting electronics. Staff and all members of the public coming into the facility do have to submit to those search protocols, the security measures that we have in place. When there are searches done in the facility in efforts to locate contraband, the dogs do go into the unit. That's any staff areas, any offices, any living portions in the unit. So everybody is equally held accountable to the necessary screening processes.
Thank you. We have two more public commenters. The next one is Megan. Megan, we're going to unmute you.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. You can begin.
Awesome, thank you. I am in support of this motion. My name is Megan. My pronouns are she, her, hers. With the Reimagine LA Coalition, I definitely, believe that this motion is a step toward really addressing probation's lack of transparency, and hopefully this will allow for more accountability. I do think it is important that we center the lives and experiences of the young folks who are inside. So seconding what Commissioner Cal County has uplifted, and definitely want to make sure that this motion does not lead to any additional surveillance or criminalization of our young people. I think that is not what we're hoping to do here. And again, just wanting to uplift the need for more transparency with regard to the probation department, and also support the idea of adding more transparency around probation's department, generally speaking, their budget, generally speaking. I know there's often unspent dollars. I know there's been difficulty with community-based organizations receiving grants and contracts from the probation's department. And I'd be curious to know who's currently receiving grants from probation, and just looking at the trends there. I think that would be really, really important to uplift as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Next up, we have Lupe Ross. Good morning, Ms. Ross. We're going to unmute you.
Oh,
Yes, good morning. You can
okay.
begin.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everybody. On the community-based organization ad hoc committee, are CBOs going to be invited to attend that meeting also?
Ms. Ross, I think that's formally up to the committee, but I will tell you, maybe Commissioner Canales can tell you that that is absolutely the intention of the committee, is to speak directly with CBOs. In fact, I had a conversation with Commissioner Kakani about the possibility of doing a town hall with CBOs. So I think there are, that's absolutely part of the plan.
Thank you very much. That's it.
All right, thank you so much. So, commissioners, oh yes, Commissioner Lewis?
The scanners that we're speaking of, I don't think we're talking about the same scanners. The scanners that we had asked to have purchased by probation, which was approved by the board and the CEO's office, were airport style or
Mhm.
type scanners. You can't walk through with a dime in your pocket when you go to the airport.
Mhm.
And that's the type of scanners that we wanted to entrance for everyone to go through. Those have not been purchased. They were not, as I understand it, from what I understand, it was not placed in the budget for probation, but we would still like those scanners to be placed at the entrance. I think it should be all facilities. This will decrease any drug, a large quantity of drugs, and you add to that the canine units. I think that like really gives us extra layers of security to make sure that drugs that could potentially harm our kids are stopped from going in. So that's one. I think we're talking about two different scanners. The scanners that we requested and that the board approved were airport style scanners, one. The second thing, I can tell you from personal observation and experience, the canines go around everybody. When we go in, they're checking probation staff, they're checking visitors, they're checking us as mentors. As a POC member, when I go in, like they're in the parking lot, so it's not directed at anybody. So I see the dogs all the time. They're inside the facility running around. They're in the different areas. So, and it's one of the things that I look to see what's going on. So the dogs are checking everybody, but would really like to again ask that those airport style scanners be placed at the entrance for everyone to go through.
Thank you for clarity on that, Commissioner Lewis. So the scanners are not yet available for the facilities to even put up. From my understanding, they have not been purchased yet.
From my understanding, not the type that we're talking about, the airport style scanners.
Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you so much. So that will be on record. So commissioners, Chair Mundo has, yes, no, go ahead.
So I know Ms. Epps was talking about how everyone is subjected to the scanners and, when they walk in, whether it's Ms. Epps, whether it's myself, whether it's family. And I think, not Commissioner, sorry, Ms. Gongora and I were at LP on, I think it was April 11th. And we were waiting for quite some time. So we got to sit in the waiting area and watch a number, and it was around shift change. So we watched a number of staff come through. And the number of folks I saw come through with phones or keys or whatever thing that may have caused the scanner to beep, who failed to put those items on the scanner, but simply hold them up to show the security staff or whoever they are that, oh, look, we've got some things that might beep, and walk through, get beeped, and then keep on moving, was quite astounding. So I didn't see folks kind of have to put everything on their bodies, again, whether it was their keys, whether it was their phones, whatever it was that may have beeped on the actual scanner, but were permitted to walk through just by holding up those items, was, again, a little disturbing. So perhaps something that we can follow up on.
Well, first, thank you for that. That's the first that I'm hearing of it, so we'll look into it because that is not the policy that's supposed to be adhered to. The second thing I wanted to address is the airport scanners. So the barrier with those is the level of exposure that people coming in continuously. When you use the scanners at the airport, it's incremental in between travel. But when we would come in daily to use it, there's a certain dosage of exposure. I don't want to say radiation, it might be, but we can certainly report back on that. It presents some health issues. So I do know we can have our Chief of Security, Mr. Strong, come in because that is a concern. That's why they have not been purchased or installed.
Thank you for that.
So that had also been
Wait
discussed.
just a minute, Commissioner.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Well, Commissioner Lewis, it's just that Commissioner Meredith had his hand up. So I'm not sure if I'm supposed to actually respect that he had his hand up or just let you talk. What should I do? Okay. Okay. Commissioner Lewis is yielding to you. So I just wanted to.
I think the contraband committee can look into a lot of these issues that we're talking about here, but I do want to recognize I was at Silmar this week and I got in there, I got scanned, had to take everything off. They wanted me. I talked to the director of the contract security and supervisor, great guy. He was on top of things and then even walked a dog by me. So I was pretty impressed with what they did at Silmar, but the contract supervisor did a good job too, and very polite and respectful.
Thank you for that. Okay, Commissioner Lewis?
So we had discussed so one, Corcoran or SADF has this style of scanner, which requires staff to go through it. And so we can contact Corcoran at CDCR. But the other plan could be simply this, and I believe we had discussed this. Initially, when the scanners are placed, everyone has to go through. And then it's just spot. It could be every fifth person, every third person, every fourth person, but everybody's not going through every day. But you never know when you'll be asked to walk through that. And that, just the threat of that, because if I get caught, I'm going to jail. I'm probably going to lose my job if I have a job. Like there are a lot of ramifications, but there are safeguards to put there. I believe if we look into this, because Corcoran has had theirs for years, or SADF has had theirs for years. Maybe we can check with them, but I believe the exposure is less than what we realize. And just as a side note, I fly at least once a week almost. Like I'm walking through those scanners so much, they should just have one at my front door and a transport to the airport. But I have a clean bill of health outside of high blood pressure, and I don't think the scanner gave me that.
Thank you for that comment. And I do also want to make a comment. I have done some research and I know there have been lawsuits about the scanners, I think in young people causing infertility. So therefore you would have been excluded from that data, Commissioner Lewis. But I do know that there have been some issues. So I'm not sure if we do need to research that further, especially if young people are going to be going through them. And then, as you say, causing an alert. Well, what if they're going through every day? I mean, how would we track that to make sure that it's simultaneously, but yet not? So there is some other issues that I think we should seriously look into, and the cause and the health effects for young people more than anything because of the infertility. And I don't know though if it was inconclusive, so I don't want to be misunderstood, but I think we need to follow up on that. So now what do I? Oh, okay. So, is there any further questions? Okay, commissioners. Chair Mundo asked me to share that he intends to appoint Commissioners Lewis and Meredith to the Committee on Contraband and Security. If anyone else would like to volunteer, please send Chair Mundo and Wendy an email. And Chair Mundo will also be appointing Commissioners Kakani and Terry to the Subcommittee on CBOs. If anyone else would like to volunteer, please send Chair Mundo and Wendy an email. Is there any further comments? Wendy, please call the roll for the vote.
Okay, so we are voting to approve the motion as it is attached to the agenda with addition to number 1, to add the review of policies to the Contraband Prevention Committee and to add the budget request to the CBO committee. With that, commissioners, please vote yes, no, or abstain. Find my list. Thank you. Commissioner Garcia-Lays?
Yes.
Commissioner Kakani?
Yes.
Commissioner Lewis?
Yes.
Commissioner Meredith? Commissioner Terry? And Chair Canales. So with 3 members absent, we have a unanimous vote approving the motion.
Now we will move on to agenda item number 4, which is an overview of probation's adult field supervision operations, including its core program. Richard Hidon, Deputy Director for the Los Angeles Probation Department, is here to present. Thank you, Richard. Please proceed.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the invitation to present on our adult operation. Look forward to the presentation. Thank you. Before I start, I like to take a moment and thank my staff. We have dedicated, hardworking, caring officers, administrative staff at all ranks, from our clerical to our secretaries, to our probation officers, to our supervising probation officers, to our directors, to our bureau chief. We have, again, dedicated staff, and we look forward to future presentations. I'm going to highlight some programs, but there's other programs also. But thank you again for the invitation. First slide, please. This is our adult active felony client count. So these are felony cases, 18,314. They have 2-year, 3-year, and 5-year probation grants. Next slide, please. This slide breaks the 18,314 by age group, and male female counts. The males represent about 82%. Females are there, 3,222. Next slide, please. Oh, Wendy, there's an updated slide. Okay, that's not updated. That's fine. So these are our area offices and the case counts by office. The first one's Antelope Valley. That's northern Lancaster area in the courthouse. Second one, CAI. So there is a other presentation that has each office, and those are acronyms. We have 16 area offices that cover the 18,000 cases. Many of them are in courthouses. We have standalone probation offices. So at a high level, this is the case count by office. Next slide, please. A further breakout by office. A little more detail. Age group, all ages, and 18 and 25-year-olds. Next slide, please. So recently, there's been a county effort to provide services for our aging population in the county, not just those who are on probation. So we drilled down on the ages. So this is a slide that shows ages from 18 to 25, 26 to 40, 41 to 59, and over 60. So if you look at the last column, there's 148 individuals on probation that are over 71. That represents 1% of the total population. So that's a high-level snapshot of a count by ages. Next slide, please. Here's a high-level snapshot of our supervision model, and I want to walk us through this. Our core supervision cases represent 52% of our total pop, 9,470. We have specialized caseloads. We group them into family violence, sex registrant, and DUI program. And those are the numbers there, 12%, 4%, and 1%. That DUI program is isolated. It's limited to Pomona. We have a grant with the state, and it's with local police department, local community. So that's not a county-wide program. So that's why that number is at 90. And then we have a low-risk kiosk caseloads throughout the county, and that's 20%. And we have a supervision intake team. So each of those 16 offices will have a supervision intake team that includes those that are in custody, and that represents 5% of our population. And then we have mental health housing, which I'll have other slides highlighting mental health housing support. That's 1,106. That represents 6%. Those clients have acute mental health disorders, substance use disorders, and are homeless. So it's a very innovative program that we work with the court. There's specialty courts that I'll walk through with in the next slide. And this is a little more detail on our core operations. We have caseloads that target emerging adults, gender specific, and high intensity core caseloads. Those to break out there. Next slide, please. And these are our, here's a snapshot of our client services. We have victim restitution, community resource fairs, our core CBI journaling. We have Invest, our employment program, mental health housing, low-risk caseloads, specialized caseloads, and we have a network of county resources with our county partners listed there. Next slide, please. So our victim restitution collection operation collects about 1.5 million per year. So here's data on the last 2 years. This year's 39 collected per month. Next slide, please. So victim restitution is very critical to our mission. This is, we're on projection to exceed last year. So there's this month's, this year's month's collection. We had a higher period just last month. And up to date this year, we've collected $740,000 for victims. And we're on target to exceed last year. If the projections hold true to that average of 139, we'll collect over 3.2 million in 2 years for victims. This money goes directly to victims. We're not talking court fees, fines, anything else. These are direct victim collections that go to victims or as ordered by the court. So it's a very robust program that's part of our overall supervision model. Next slide, please. And could we go to the next slide and then go back, please? So we just had a community resource fair at Long Beach, April 10th. And to date, since we started this effort about 2.5 years ago, resource fairs. This is one that happened in Long Beach, and there's a pretty very good quote from our Long Beach director. We had over 60 providers there. And there was Disney on the spot hiring for our clients. These resource fairs are for our clients and for the public. Next, can we go back to the previous slide, please? So we have an upcoming resource fair, May 30th, and I'd like to invite the commissioners to attend. We'll have, again, a number of providers. It's services for clients and the public. Thank you. So it's, and you have this presentation material, so it's May 30th. It'd be great if one of you could attend. Anybody would like to attend from the commissioners? May 30th, Thursday. We'll have housing, education, employment services. There'll be at least 300 to 400 clients come in, and the public. It's at a local park. Santa Monica's at the courthouse. Next slide, please.
I think what they were able to do, Director Hedon, is pull up the new version of the presentation.
Okay.
So we can go back in a second to the 2 slides that you added.
Sure. So, yeah, why don't we go back to those 2 slides? It's towards the front. Okay, go back. So this slide was added to it's hard reading the acronyms, but those are the locations from Antelope Valley, Central Adult Investigation, Centinela, East Los Angeles, East San Fernando Valley, Firestone, which is at the Martin Luther King Hospital, Foothills in Pasadena, Harbor, Long Beach, Pomona, Rio Hondo, Riverview, the Reentry Opportunity Center, Crenshaw, formerly the Crenshaw office, across street from USC, South Central, San Gabriel, Santa Monica, and Valencia. So those are our offices. All our field offices, with the exception of the very first one, Central Adult Investigation, that's downtown at the courthouse. If you notice, the case count is very small. That's where folks are placed on drug court and supervised either downtown or at Foothill, but they're assigned at Central Adult Investigations. Yeah.
Count is slide 5.
Next slide, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you notice, that's why Central Adult Investigations has that smaller number. Riverview's in Arcadia next to the 605 and the 10. And all of you are invited to any one of our offices as well. Next slide, please. I'm going to go to the slide that was added. It had the ratio breakout. Very busy. I'll have a better slide in the future, but that gives a breakout of the entire population by office with the race breakout. It's hard to read. We'll develop a pie chart and it'll be a little bit more friendlier to see, but a lot of information there. Could we go back to the slides on mental health, please? So our mental health housing, again, we provide services for those that have those 3 acute needs: mental health, substance use, and housing. Next slide, please. There's a breakout of our count, and we have 4 different streams avenues where clients come in. They all come from specialty courts. We have an ODR felony court, which is our original one started in 2016. We have ODR diversion, and we have felony incompetent to stand trial cases out of Hollywood Court, and our regional center clients. Next slide, please. And there's a breakout of our population of the 1106. Next slide, please. A different slide on the same population. Next slide, please. And this is all of them have housing. There's permanent housing, temporary housing, residential treatment housing, and regional center housing. So that you'll see that majority are in temporary housing, and clients do transition from temporary to permanent. Next slide, please. I think that's it. So I know it was a lot of information. I did highlight mental health housing and our restitution collection, but we have a very robust, innovative employment program that I'd like to give a presentation in the future on. So I think that's it, Chair.
Thank you for your presentation, Deputy Director Hiron. Commissioners, I'd like to open up for questions from you all. Yes, Commissioner Meredith.
Apparently, they have a lot of probationers and AB 109ers that come onto their facilities that usually have warrants for AWOL. And they were saying there's a lot of programs available. They'd like to develop a better coordinated relationship with the department.
Your timing's perfect. We've had some recent conversations with them. We're in a group that's looking at that as well. But we're starting some pilots, one at our AB 109 operation, and we're also inviting them to tour our offices. And I think they're going to provide on-site services We're just trying to find the best location of the 16 offices. So we're engaged with them as we speak.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Terry.
I was wondering, how does supervision look different for the different age groups? Because there's now the focus on, I think you said it was 71 and over, but then there's also a lot of focus on that emerging adulthood. So does it look different by age group? And do you all track outcomes or engage folks in a different way in the different ages?
Good question. We really isolate the 18 to 25, and we have specific programming, and we have caseloads that only have 18 to 25-year-olds. So we are targeting services and wrapping employment opportunities for them if they have court-ordered conditions. So we are doing things differently from years back. And I showed the overall ages because there's a current county initiative targeting services for the aging population in LA County, not just our department. But we do have gender-specific caseloads as well.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Kakani?
Thank you. So I have a bunch of questions that are a little bit all over the place. The restitution that you all collect, is that just for the adult population?
Yes.
Okay. And I know you said that all of those dollars are distributed. Does that also, do some of those dollars also go to the probation department to fund the collection of restitution?
No.
Or is that a different line item?
Those items are monies that go directly to victims.
Okay. Do you know if there's a, like a,
The
yeah,
county,
like,
the
go ahead.
county passed a number of initiatives where administrative fees are waived. So there's no cost for probation services. There's no administrative costs.
No, I'm aware of that, but I imagine that is there a group of people who are responsible for collecting the restitution?
Our probation officers engage clients. They actually make payments, and it goes directly to the treasurer tax collector, and the treasurer tax collector then mails the monies to the victims.
I guess do you know if there is a separate amount of money within probation's budget that goes to the actual collection of funds?
We have administrative folks.
Yeah.
And we can look at that number, but we do have administrative clerical folks
Sure.
that work those.
Yeah,
numbers.
just wondering how much we spend on collecting restitution and if that's actually close. I know historically, which is part of why some of the administrative fees were waived, was because the amount that was spent on collecting restitution was similar to the amount of restitution that was actually collected. So I was just wondering if you knew that information.
We can check and get the update, but a few years back, there was a state law passed that prohibited fees and fines related to adults and juveniles. So there shouldn't be, but I'm not as familiar with the full structure here in Los Angeles, and I haven't had an opportunity to do a deep dive, but there shouldn't be. We can check into it.
No, I'm not asking if that like administrative fee is imposed on the actual individual who owes the restitution. I was just wondering if there's actually part of your budget that is dedicated to the collection of restitution that comes from the county, that comes from, the general fund, net county costs, whatever it is, but that's fine. The other questions I had were related to housing. Is that probation run housing? Do you all just place folks in that housing?
That's through the court. It's a collaborative with county departments, the health department, ODR, the court. So it's a collaborative. It's not a specific housing contract by probation.
Okay. And can you speak a little bit about the caseload for, I don't know if if there's a general caseload that each kind of probation officer who is supervising an individual in the field, like that field DPOs might have. Is there a caseload number?
Yeah, we could provide that. For example, the bank caseload, administrative caseloads, they could go up to 1,000 to 1. So
The which caseloads? I'm sorry.
the administrative caseload, they refer to a kiosk, bank caseloads.
Okay,
They could go up to 1,000 to 1 because they report via kiosk.
sure.
So depending on the specialized caseload, but we could provide targeted caseload size to the group.
Yeah, that would be great, even just if it's different based on the age group, different based on the type of thing that is being supervised. I think it'd be helpful to know that caseload. And do you have any data on like violations, like how many folks are violated, what they're violated for, whether that results in their incarceration, kind of like the outcome stuff that I think
Sure.
Commissioner Terry was talking about?
Yeah, we could prepare that for a future meeting. But the bigger violations are new arrests.
Okay.
Technical violations, we work with the court. They're not remanding folks in for technical violations. It's really the new arrests. So we could pull that data.
Yeah, or even if technical violations result in lengthening probation, like extending the period of supervision. I think all of that information would be helpful. And I think that's all I have for questions.
Thank you so much. Any other commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Sean Garcia Lays.
Sorry, the last question I was going to ask was related to the deployments of field DPOs to the hall. If you've heard of how that's impacting supervision, how that's impacting the DPOs kind of in the areas that you presented.
I promised our county council and probation that I would, if this question came up, say that is the next agenda
Okay,
item.
all right then. Thank you, sorry about that.
How do we know how effective or whether these programs are reducing recidivism?
We have, the mental health housing. It's a high success rate. It's won a number of county awards. Our invest program, we could pull some data. We have most folks come into probation, have 2-year grants, and they finish. Our violation rate is pretty low, so we could wrap that and give that to you. But as people come in and they successfully complete probation, we could provide that number as well.
Yeah, I mean, because this all sounds great, but it's also very high level, and it seems to, sort of skirt around the question, which I always want to know, which is the public safer? How much safer? And are all those numbers over time going in the right direction, right? I mean, there have been concerns in the public about increasing crime over the last several years. And one of the major focuses of criminal justice reform for the last decade has been to shorten sentences. And that puts more importance on probation. And on the long term, we know that's been working. In the short term, there's some questions. And so I would like to be able to assure the public that, shorter sentences and more probation is actually making the public safer. But this presentation wouldn't help me make that claim. It doesn't discount that claim at all, but that's information I would really be grateful for.
Okay. Thank you.
And then I did also have one more detailed question about the restitution. But first, so I understand your question is, for example, if we have an office with 10 staff collecting restitution and we pay them $150,000 a month to collect $150,000 a month, it might not be effective. But then my question is, the numbers dropped off dramatically in February and March of this year, even though this year you were saying it stands to be more restitution collected than the year before. Can you tell us why?
Collecting restitution is very complicated. There's joint several cases where there's multiple defendants, one crime. Folks lose employment. So these are restitution amounts where somebody on probation has a restitution amount, and they have their own household to maintain too. So there's a number of challenges, but we do focus on restitution, and we did have a spike that I'm going to look into for April. If you look at the data. But if we continue with the average the last 16 months, we'll exceed last year's.
So I saw this spike in April and the equivalent dip in February and March, but it was pretty consistent. There's definitely no dips or spikes like that anywhere else in the graph that you showed us. So I didn't hear an answer to whether or not you know why there was that dip in the spike, or maybe, I mean, you just said you're going to look into the spike, but do we know what was different about those months as opposed to all the other months?
You know, I'd have to look at it. The cases could have went down. You know, it's not everybody on probation has a restitution order, so we got to look at all that stuff.
Yes, Commissioner Terry?
Just a follow-up to that, how does it work if someone has that restitution order, but they're not able to pay it? Does it just kind of get tacked on? Is it like child support where wages are garnished? What is that
You know,
process?
we inform the court. The court would then likely issue some civil judgment towards the end. But person placed on probation 2, 3, or 5 years has that period to pay restitution, and the court would make the final decision at the end.
And is there any, like if someone, if you know someone has been struggling to find a job, for instance, or like you said, has those household budget concerns, and then the period comes and they haven't paid it, is there any advocacy, like, or what happens to that person? Is there room for advocacy with the court? I guess I'm wondering.
Well, you know, I think the DA, the PD would get involved, but again, you know, I'm not minimizing restitution at all. You know, these are crimes against a person, and there's a restitution amount, so there's a victim involved. So the advocacy would have to be addressed in court.
Thank you. And my question was about the housing. I noticed on the pie chart, a large majority is temporary housing. Is everyone kept in temporary housing until they transition to the permanent housing? Or is some of that considered like a night or two in a hotel voucher or in a program? Or how is the temporary housing being tracked?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And for that client base, I just want to, you know, it's a very, you know, folks may be on prescribed medication, they have to be stable, but there's a network. So they're not permanent, but they're transitioning, but everybody's provided a housing location. And we have a number of folks. Our officers go to the housing providers. We have over 76 housing providers. So they're throughout the county.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Now, Wendy, do we have any written or live public comment on agenda item?
I don't believe we had any written public comment. We do? And it was already sent to the commissioners? Okay, great. So we have some written public comment already shared with commissioners and attached to the agenda. If you want to make further written public comment, send an email to info@poc.lacounty.gov. Do we have anyone in the room who would like to make public comment? If so, you can make your way up to the podium. I don't, oh yeah, okay, great. Welcome. And if you'd like to make public comment virtually, please use the raise your hand function or dial *3 on your phone. I'm going to go ahead and keep your time, and I'll let you know when it's up. So we'll start with public comment in the room and then move to virtual.
That's mainly a question. My name is Roseanne Crooms. You had mentioned that restitution is important for the overall goal of probation. Could you speak a little bit about that? Because I'm assuming the overall goal is for safer communities and recidivism. And then also, is there a breakdown for the victim restitution, whether it's going to corporations and entities, or is it actually going to people in the community?
Good question. It's one of our missions, restoring victims, restoration. Yeah, very good question. So we could break out the restitution, whether it's a corporation or victims. My experience, there's not many that are going to a corporation. Most are to actual individuals, but we could pull that data. And victim restoration is one of our missions. You know, client services, providing care, an avenue for employment. So we have a number of initiatives, and victim restoration is one. So if my intention is not to say that's not the most important thing, but it's very critical to our operations.
Thank you for that. Anybody signed up online? Oh, sorry, I'm not paying attention over here. Okay, we're going to start with Tahida Shakur. We'll unmute you.
It was for agenda item 2 or 3, but I think I got skipped. That's what I was speaking on, not number 4.
Okay, we'd welcome you to give public comment at the end of the meeting, or if it applies to any of the agenda items. I'm sorry that we missed you. I've heard there's maybe a slight delay on the broadcast to YouTube, so I hope folks will join on WebEx. Thank you for that, and we'll move on to, is this a new hand for Tanya Ibanez? Tanya?
Hello, good
Go
morning.
ahead.
Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Hidon, for your report. My question, I have a couple of follow-up questions. And maybe you can clarify, or maybe someone else on the panel can clarify. My understanding is that the length of probation is determined by the court. And so my question is, does the department have the ability or the authority to ask the court to either increase or decrease the amount of probation depending on how well the client is doing in the probation period, number one? And then number 2, does the probation department actually track or have the ability to track whether or not someone who has fulfilled the probation requirement has committed crimes within a 2-year period? I don't know if that's being tracked, or if the probation department can track, or if this is something that maybe the commission could track. And then also for employment data, does the probation department track whether or not the clients are still employed within a year or 2 after they have completed probation? Thank you.
Very good questions. Thank you. So the probation period, so there was legislation passed in the 2021 where most grants are now 2 years, AB 1950. If there's some statutory requirements, cases may be 3 years and 5 years. For example, domestic violence and DUI cases, they have statutory periods of probation. But for the most part, moving forward, grants, unless there's enhancement or something with the DA and the court, most grants are going to be 2-year grants moving forward. We do track new arrests, and we do report them to the court. And the third question, Wendy?
Employment data, including maybe a year after folks are off.
Yeah, employment, we do have a robust employment program, Invest. We do have an opportunity track for clients to get employment. We don't track employment after somebody's off probation.
I think there was also one other question, which was, can probation ask for the time to be increased or decreased?
The court makes any extension. We can ask for an early termination if all conditions are completed as ordered by the court. And for example, if somebody had restitution, their restitution would have to be paid in full. But we do have the ability to ask for an early termination at the halfway point of the probation grant.
Great, thank you. Okay, we'll go next to Lupe Ross. Ms. Ross, we're going to unmute you. Okay, so we'll go to Taliba Coffee. Ms. Coffee, we're going to unmute you and you can begin. Actually, don't begin yet. Let us unmute you and then I'll tell you when we can hear you. Ms. Coffee, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you for allowing me to speak. One thing that I noticed that wasn't mentioned on there was our community collaborative court. I've been pushing as a line staff to get this more recognized by upper management. It is a program where it's an alternative to sentencing program where we deal with homeless clients, veterans, mentally ill clients, and we get them into programs. It's a very intense program, and I think that's something that the department needs to expand on. We don't have a lot of funding for it, so if we have more funding, I think we can find more programs for them and as also long-term housing for them as well. But it is a program that I feel like the department needs to expand on and give more recognition to Unfortunately, some of our officers have been removed from that program due to the deployment. But it is a wonderful program. I've seen it make changes in people's lives. And that's all I would want to comment on.
Thank you for that comment, Ms. Coffey. And that would actually make a great agenda item, hearing more about the Community Collaborative Court. So we will look into that. Commissioners, do you have any questions or further comments? Yes,
So
Commissioner.
just to ask if Mr. Huron can provide also any recidivism data, not just related to violations, but also once supervision is successfully completed, if they have information on whether, how many folks, if they have that information, recidivate.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Commissioner Lewis?
I want to circle back to the question about being able to extend probation. You did say that you could request if all things were going well and they had paid restitution, et cetera, that you could ask for early termination. But let's say hypothetically at the end of the probation period, you got 90 days left and this person is not doing great. Can probation ask for an extension?
It could be recommended. It's not normally recommended. The DA, the PD, the court would all have major decision making on that one. A decision could be made. There could be an outstanding condition that hasn't been met yet. There could be a restitution amount where there's multiple victims. So there could be a scenario where there could be a recommendation for an extension.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. So hearing no further comments, we will move on to agenda item number 5. Can our additional panelists for agenda item 5 please join us now? For agenda item number 5, the Los Angeles County Probation Department will provide a report on deployments to the juvenile halls and the impact on caseload on the field. Deputy Directors Felicia Cotton and Howard Wong. We will hear from you both, first followed by Frank Paredes from the Professional Managers Association, and closing with Dwight Thompson from the AFSCME 685 Union. Deputy Director Cotton and Wong, are you ready? The floor is now yours. Who would like to present first? Good morning.
Since we're with adult, we'll start with adult.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to present again. The question was on deployments and impacts. So at the offices, we did have to deploy our field staff, as noted in my
Is your speaker on? Can everyone hear okay?
in my AB 109 presentation a couple of weeks back. Impacts, yes. Right? We had to deploy DPO2s in the field to help in the juvenile halls. We left the SDPOs and DPO2s in the field offices to cover the caseloads, right? We have to have shifted some DPOs from adult core and juvenile, I'm just talking about 109, to help with some of the supervision and the check-ins. No offices were closed, but the impact was shorter durations of interaction with the clients, and the staff did not go out in the community to see the clients, but the clients continued to come in to the offices for reporting and referrals for services and check-ins. So impacts, yes. Good thing is that 60-day rotation of the DPO2s to the field, the first set is coming to an end as of this week. So the folks that left us in the first round are actually coming back to the offices now. And so for the field side, 109 caseload numbers, similar to what Mr. Harong presented. I'm just gonna give some bulk numbers. Some of our major higher cases by area offices is our South LA office, is our 109 South LA office, which has, as of 2 days ago, roughly about 1,500 cases. It's being handled by 4 supervisors and 1 DPO. So these clients are coming in, not all at once, right, to check in, they ask for services, and they're being met by SDPOs or supervisors. Some of our smaller ones are like Rio Hondo, 256 cases being handled by 4 DPOs, 2 supervisors and 2 DPOs. 2 of the DPOs are borrowed from the adult core side. But they are being seen. Our special enforcement folks are going back out to the field to conduct compliance checks, check-ins, and door knocks. And that's the adult side. Just in bulk numbers. That's what's been happening on deployments from adults. So thanks to Mr. Arone, Ms. Cotton, we did get some additional resources from the adult core and juvenile operations to help with our staffing some of our offices, right? Where 2 suits might not be enough. So we did get additional resources that way. Thank you.
Good morning. On the juvenile side of the house, as Mr. Wong has already indicated, all offices remained open and we were able to provide services to all youth on probation. We gave particular and specific attention to those that were detained, pre-pleas. Those are kids, predisposition youth that are pending a court hearing. So we wanted to make sure that resources were available to target and ensure that those young people had a recommendation in court so that their detention would not get extended. We also have high-risk, high-need caseloads where we also were able to maintain a very small portion of our field deputies that do contacts in the community. So we were able to maintain those contacts, not as robust as they were in the past. And those would include those folks that are coming from our step down from Barry J or from our step down facilities into the community, our secure youth treatment program, as well as those transitioning from camp or those on intensive gang supervision caseloads. So those still had mobile teams available where we would normally have 6 to 8 of those teams available. We're probably down to 2 to 4 of those that are available to go in the community to provide that support countywide. So we had a total of 63 full duty staff that were deployed in round 1 to the juvenile hall from juvenile special services, juvenile field services, as well as our placement unit. We provided a document that went from area office, starting with Crenshaw. It gave you the numbers of staff that we lost from each of those 2 deployment. As Mr. Wong has indicated, those staff are on target to start to return back to the office, starting some this week. Most of the bulk of them will be next week. So it goes through each of the programs. The juvenile field is the area office, our juvenile special. You'll see our intensive gang units, the number of staff that were deployed from there, from our secure treatment facility, transition supervision program. You'll see it by area office. You'll see our field case plan quality assurance teams. Everybody was impacted by the deployment. That team is not case carrying, but that team provides the oversight of our case plans to ensure that there's fidelity and adherence to the state model that's required for that. Our competency, record sealing, early intervention and diversion programs, investigation units, and again, the very small portion of the school-based that remains. And then we went into placement. We give you the numbers by bureau. There is a number of 2,321 juvenile cases with 241 that are on extended foster care, not counted in that number. numbers on average before deployment for placement ranged at somewhere between 10 to 12. They're now ranging 18 to 20. These are officers that are required by Division 31 to see their staff, to see their youth monthly. They have been able to maintain those. We did go to a regional model to make sure that high-risk, high-need staff were being seen in the community, and those that are on our community-based regular supervision are being seen in the office on a regional model similar to what was presented either by DPOs and or by SDPOs that are in the office. Our juvenile field caseloads ranged prior to deployment at somewhere around 25. They are currently post-deployment at 44. Our juvenile, again, special services, which is our high-risk, high-need, ranged at 30 prior to deployment and now are at 36. And so we went to a regional model, and what happens is when the first round of deployment staff go out, we go into a model where we look at staff that work in a region, that are familiar with that region. And I'll give you an example. Centinela, Firestone, South Central would be a region that we would look at, familiar with the resources in that area, familiar with the schools, the supervision, and they would be given a combined caseload that would cover theirs along with a few cases from other staff that have been deployed. So that's what I mean when I say we move to a regional model to ensure that all youth and families are being serviced. We have what we call an officer of the day model at the area office. That means there's a deputy probation officer available around the clock from 8 to 5 should anybody walk into the office and need any support. We also have supervisors available in the office should staff need to be seen. Impacts, yes, there have been impacts. We don't have the number of staff that we had previously, of course, that would have been impacted by deployments and certainly some of the more intense for the high risk, high need has been lessened as well. But we are able to make the contacts that we are required to make. We are able to look at some future models as well, which will include some late night and weekends that we're moving into as well, that we're exploring to make sure that we increase as we look at round 2 deployments that are scheduled to start this month as well.
Thank you. I just wanted to note that per the commission's request, I did invite labor to attend the meeting today. I was expecting representatives from AFS-CME 685, the largest union. So there are 3 unions, just for the public to know, that represents the most of the probation employees. But it appears that they're not here today to give the presentation. Also, Frank Paredes, who many of you know from Professional Managers Association, which is on the other side and represents the smallest number of managers, was intending to be here today, but had a family emergency this morning and is not attended. At the middle union is SEIU 721, and that is partially my responsibility. I got some confirmation yesterday and I didn't follow up with them in time to get them here. So it appears that we don't have a formal union representation here today.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Wendy. And now, commissioners, do you have any questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Meredith?
I was just going to follow up since they were unable to schedule them.
I would hope so. Sure, we're going to reach out and see. Any other commissioners with comments or questions? Yes, Commissioner Kakani.
So I think you said the 60 days for this first round of deployments is up or coming up, the 60-day window?
It's up. So the first round of folks that got deployed, their 60 days is up this week. So they're starting to trickle back down to the field offices.
I guess I don't know who this question goes to then. So then what is being done to ensure that staffing ratios are correct in accordance with the law in the halls? Is there a second round of deployment or what's the plan?
Yes, round 2 of deployments will go this month. And just to be clear, the trickle back to the field is starting this week. So there'll be a group this week, there'll be another group because the
that's good.
start dates were different. So we're tracking the 60-day start period, and they have different ranges. We should be complete with most of the trickle back to the field this month, and then the new group will start in a week or so once we have verified their training and either enroll them or verify that they're complete. They will start this month. So yes, we do have a group that is reviewing our staffing numbers to ensure that we have available staffing. We do have some
I think you
folks-
might need to speak into the mic, sorry.
Okay, we do have some folks that were not available to go into round one that we were able to train. They were either on vacation or just not available. And so they are starting to go in. So there are varying strategies of folks going in and coming out back to their original assignments.
But it's, okay, so it'll be essentially a brand new group of probation officers interacting with these young folks inside the halls of the deployed group.
They may not be brand new to the kids because this second group may have been impacted by other deployment strategies that occurred. We've been in deployment since the pandemic. So these are folks that have probably been deployed at some point, either on a 2-day deployment or on the first deployment that we had that I think was up to 12 months. So these are folks that are familiar with the kids. They've been in the juvenile halls. They're also folks that work overtime with our young people on weekends and when we have overtime available.
Okay, and then, sorry, this might be a silly question because I don't totally understand the process. Do young folks who are detained, do they get assigned a probation officer to I don't know, to write their reports, to meet with them, to figure out their needs, to create a plan for them?
So there are two sets of probation officers. There's an investigator if you're brand new. And so that person would be responsible for writing the court report, doing the investigation, reaching out to parents, school, mental health, whatever we need to learn about that young person in order to do what we call a pre-plea report and make a recommendation to the court. So that young person is assigned an investigation DPO. If you are already on probation and you, let's just say, have contact with law, get rearrested, there is a probation officer that is assigned to you already that then would assume the responsibility for that report.
Okay. So I didn't hear you talk about this level of impact, but a number of the defense attorneys that I've spoken to, whether they're at the PD's office, APD's office, or part of the panel, are saying that their clients, there's a delay in the pre-plea reports, especially if they're in the community and not detained. Super boilerplate, not with specifics, sometimes wrong family names. Again, so not terribly helpful in terms of identifying what the needs of young people are. And then I'm also hearing that young folks who are in the community aren't even meeting their probation officer, for example, until a week before court. So again, there's no meaningful supervision, there's no meaningful support, there's no, I guess the things that, probation is charged with providing, whether it's connection with services, whether it's support for the family, aren't really happening given that young folks aren't meeting their POs until a week before court. So I'm not sure if you've heard similar things or if you have thoughts on that or how that can or will be addressed.
We have some strategies in place. Number one, to look, as I mentioned, the detained pre-pleas. We have what we call court trackers that track court report due dates. And court reports are due in court 2 days prior to the court hearing. So we get a notice if that report is not there. And so those are the court reports, again, as I mentioned, that we want to ensure that we are not late or missing on because those young people are detained and we don't want them detained in juvenile hall any longer than they should be. When I looked 2 weeks ago, we had not missed any of those reports. Now, there is a 10-day window that we have to complete those reports. And oftentimes there are orders where we're not to speak to the young person at all. And we follow those orders, or we're not to speak to the young person about certain things. We immediately, what should happen, again, and I have to dig deeper into that, is that the family should be immediately contacted for an interview. Normally, those interviews occur in the office where there's a list of things that we ask the family for to bring when they come to those hearings. So I haven't heard much about any issues on the pre-plea side. If you're speaking to the supervision, we did break down some caseloads. I have not heard of any major issues where families aren't being seen. I'll look into that as well. I haven't gotten any of those complaints. Maybe I got two where a family, it was rumored that the office was closed. The office wasn't closed. Went in and looked to see who we had on duty. We had 6 probation officers in the office as well as 4 supervisors. So I checked on that one, cleared that up, made sure that the mom had numbers to folks if she ever needed to reach out for support. So we follow up on them when we get them, but I would be more, I'm very interested in those so that we can correct those immediately.
Right, and I understand the pre-plea reports being prioritized for the detained folks, but I'm saying that, like, you know, did you get any notification for pre-plea reports that aren't submitted or where extensions are requested for those who are in the community? You don't have,
We have a prohibition right now. Any continuations on pre-pleas need to come to my level. I have not gotten any requests for continuations for pre-pleas. We have these officers in regions covering our investigations monthly. So some of them may have a hybrid caseload where they may have 10 supervision and they take the overage of the investigations. So we have somebody that, we have a team that looks at that regularly. That's a regular function of probation. We call it the farm in, farm out process, meaning that if one group gets overloaded, we have the ability to reassign those cases in a timely fashion because we find out the day the court report is ordered. We have a probation officer that sits in court to make sure that we get that information immediately so that we can meet those mandates.
so would you like me to forward you the cases
I would.
where there has been a
Absolutely.
delay in the pre-plea reports?
I would.
Where- Okay.
Absolutely.
Because, yeah, perhaps there's, I don't know if there's like an issue with the tracking. I think one of the other things that we had asked for, so I appreciate the sharing of the number of folks who have been deployed, but what that is in relation to the total number of people in each of these offices would be helpful, right? So if the pre-release center, for example, has 6 folks who are deployed, is that 6 folks out of 8? Is that 6 folks out of 6? Or is that 6 folks out of 20? So I don't know if that information can be provided. And then if there can be a breakdown of cases written so that everyone can kind of access it and digest it in terms of like office, right? So if it was, I don't know if it's by Placement Services Bureau, for example, has, you know, I think you said 2,300 cases, but I don't know what that means per office, if that's how it's divided. But it's hard to make sense of, again, if the number of cases aren't shared, either per office or per bureau, and like what that might mean for what it looks like for an individual DPO and their caseload. You know, maybe going from 10 to 12 to 18 to 20 isn't a huge deal. Maybe it is a huge deal. Maybe it's not a big deal for families or individuals to have to come into the office. Maybe it is a big deal. I'm not sure, but it's hard to gauge without kind of that breakdown of like cases per office and then also the total number of staff who were originally there in comparison to the number that was deployed.
Yes. Commissioner Kakani, I know my colleague Donisha over there is writing down these requests to make sure. So can I just clarify exactly what you're asking for here and ask if you're making this as an official request? So I'm hearing you say, for example, the first part of the page says Adult Investigative Services Bureau, 30 people deployed. You're saying 30 out of how many staff are assigned at that location?
Yeah, and I don't even know if it can be broken down. I mean, just so for example, Mr. Hiron provided kind of a breakdown of cases per office, right? So obviously Riverview has however many thousands of cases. So maybe having folks from that office being pulled is a larger lift. So it would also be helpful to know the breakdown per office, like the Central Adult Services Court Officer team, if there are 6 folks who are being deployed, 6 folks out of how many? Does that make sense?
I think I understood the
Okay.
question. And so, right.
And then again, the cases I don't know, I imagine the cases are broken down per office.
Yeah, thank you very much. Great questions. Any other questions from the, yes, Commissioner Terry?
Just two questions. When you mentioned that one of the impacts has been the shorter duration, like less time with clients, what has that gone down to? Like, what is it ideally? And then what is it currently?
Ideally, usually pre-deployment, anything from half an hour to an hour. I'm just guesstimating because that's what I did when I was a caseload carrying DPO, about half an hour. Now, possibly by half. I'm just guesstimating because
Yeah.
I haven't been there for a long time.
Okay, just trying to get a
Yep.
sense of what that means. And in terms of that and less going out in the field, and if we're assuming that the caseloads are still going to be pretty high because there's another team of, deployed workers going out, how is there any way to work with CBOs, with other community agencies to help with that? If I know I can only give you 15 minutes, am I connecting you to a CBO who can spend that additional time, or is that already happening? Could you share more about that?
That's one of the questions being worked out at the 109 work group, the AB 109 work group. I'm only talking about 109, where we do have CBOs and appointees at the table. So that's one of the discussion items. So once this budget cycle moves through, I can come back and say, hey, such and such, we're proposing this with this amount for X, right? So, but those are some of the questions being asked at the table at PSRT.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Sean Garcia Lays.
So I hear two things about this. One is because of these reassignments, the probation department is not being as effective at its job of reducing crime, which is another way of saying that crimes are happening because of these reassignments. The other thing I'm hearing is that these offices are grossly overstaffed and people aren't really doing anything anyways, and so this actually isn't having any impact at all. And I don't know which or if either of those are true or if there are some other effects of all of this. So what does the department know about whether or not these reassignments have increased crime, or whether or not crime has increased as a result of these reassignments?
That's a good question.
And it's one that every university criminologist would struggle to answer, but that is their job, is to try and answer these hard questions. So I'm wondering if the department has any sense.
So I'm gonna throw something out there.
Mhm.
This reminds me of early COVID, when the county shut down for 2.5 years. Literally, everything was a phone check-in, right? Was there a spike in crime? Was there this? Not sure, right? This is not like that, right? So, good question, I don't know. Because back in early COVID, all offices were shut down. Everybody was at home. The check-ins were by phone, right? So, I don't know. Not sure if Ms. Epps has anything for this, but I really don't know.
Would you like to make a motion so that we could know?
No, well, so I'm hoping none of my clients are listening, but I've had clients who I was like, yeah, you should have gotten violated, and that actually we're all a little bit better off that you took a break. So, I mean, violations would be one way of measuring. Is there a dip in the number of recommendations for violations? Is there a dip in the number of weapons that are being recovered as a result of searches? I mean, any sort of measure of outcomes at all might help give some clarity to this, because we have measures of inputs, and this tells us that there's an impact. Commissioner Connie's point was I was going to bring that up too, which is I don't know what these numbers mean, but they're measures of inputs. I don't see any measures of impacts in the community or outside the department staffing, and that would help me know whether or which of those two things I'm hearing is true, that there's been no impact, again, which would suggest that probation is not very effective if there's no impact to it not doing what it was doing before, versus there is an impact, but I want to know what that is. So I don't have a particular data request because I don't know what data there is or what answer, but it's important to know that nobody in the department knows the answer to that question. And then the other thing I brought up when we asked for this, or when I asked for this agenda item, was we get a number of critical incident reports per month. And I have wondered whether or not any of those critical incidents, if we were to investigate what services were being provided to those particular individuals, were the services they were provided impacted, or how were they impacted by the reassignment of people? Now, because we're talking about particular cases, perhaps this is something that the Office of the Inspector General needs to look into, not something that's appropriate for general discussion at a public meeting. But that may be something we need to do in the follow-up. But is there anything that any of the staff feel comfortable talking about those critical incidents today?
Well, thank you for the question, the opportunity to respond. So there was a critical incident that hit the press. So we would look at any high profile notice. There was an individual that shot a cop and a critical notice came out. So the immediate question was, when was the last time the person was contacted? So according to our internal data, this individual had been contacted on the 8th, just under 2 weeks before this incident happened. It was an in-office visit. I asked what was the pattern of compliance with this individual. They had been in compliance with their probation. They had had no technical violations. And prior to that, they had had no documented new law violations, and there had been no warrants issued. So when I get a high-profile notice, you just kind of go back to what you know. And it's been my experience in probation to always follow up and say, hey, give me the breakdown. How many contacts have you had with this person? What was the controlling offense when they came onto probation? What was the last contact? What was the last contact type? So in looking at that, there was no correlation that we could identify in this behavior and contacts, because as I said, they'd been in compliance and the last contact had actually been on, I think, April 8th. It was April 8th. So I would say as far as the data, we have the ability to look at new law violations, right? Who gets arrested? When you have stats for people's cases, you have the opportunity to look at any technical violations, failures to report, if there's positive drug test or any other court order, term and condition that you did not comply with. But I have found since coming to LA, the way that data is compiled and reviewed is different. I happened to actually be talking just before the beginning of the meeting, sharing a sample chief's report that has a demographic breakdown, how many people are on probation, how many law violations, and some other information, stating to Mr. Harron, I would be sending it to the deputy directors to get some input because we're looking to develop something like that similar. I did leave a copy for the chief's office just yesterday saying, hey, can I have your additional notes on this, which he does have. We've discussed it. It's obviously been something that hadn't been pushed through. I hope to have it sooner rather than later, and we can share once we get that up and going. I mean, it obviously would be a report. The goal would be not only to have some sort of dashboard, but also some type of tangible report so people could just eyeball, these are the factors. So that's what we're doing to be able to do that more specific and more streamlined process.
Thank you. Any other questions? Commissioners? Okay, thank you. I just want to note, when I was in Barry J, there was a gentleman that I recognized from before, and while in custody, he, excelled, did great. So I was surprised to see him back in, and I asked, what happened? What went wrong? I was trying to see how probation failed him, to be totally honest. I didn't say that straight out, but I was just like, what were you lacking? What happened? And they were very candid. And they said that their PO actually provided employment, clothing, and even some cash assistance, and were very encouraging. But then they said, and then I just got in my own head at the time. What do you do at that moment where there is no one available? So there is, I think, some things where we're going to see tracking where there was everything done and then at that moment. But I also just have a quick question. And I'm not even sure if my question is for you or if it's for a union representative that is not here today. But as far as the field officers that are being deployed, is there like communication? Is there a volunteer program? We need you at this moment in the halls and camps, who, could come and help out, and then we'll put you back in the field to your original position? Or is it just kind of like a direct order, you're going to do this? And, or how is the process there? Is it with face-to-face communication? And are you getting feedback from the field officers as far as the deployment goes?
I'll answer the initial question, then I'll defer to the deputy directors. So right now, deployments are mandated. We do have a number of people that work voluntary overtime, but the need is so significant that we do have to mandatorily deploy people into the field. There is a notification process that the deputy directors can address. And then there was another part of your question. Is there a notice? Is it done face to face?
Yeah.
And I thought there was another portion.
Yeah, I did. I asked, is there like, respectful communication of having a meeting with the field officers and saying, this is the process we're going to be taking? Or is it just kind of like a text message, an email, or what is the process?
I'll defer more specifically to the deputy directors who deal with the meetings or deal with the issues of training right before the deployment and looking at the numbers for deployment to address that specifically.
The staff get a phone call from the supervisor.
Oh,
So it's a direct phone call.
okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that. Now, Wendy I will pass the mic over to Wendy now.
Okay, we're going to go to public comment. If there are people in the room who'd like to make public comment, please feel free to make your way up to the podium. And those of you who are online on WebEx, use the little raise your hand function or dial *3 on your phone. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, there's no interaction or available public comment there, but you can join on WebEx and call in. We're going to begin with Mr. Bell.
How you doing? Sorry about our reps not being here. I deal with camps mainly, so I'm not too knowledgeable of the field. But some things I do know, and Ms. Canales, that was a good question you brought up. Some of the responses I got from the officers about how they were told were about, some were told 2 days before they were supposed to show up to training. Some was given like really late notices. And the times that they have to be there, now they go from getting to work at 8 in the morning to 6 in the morning. Who's taking their kids to school? So I don't know a lot about the operation of the field, but I do know how it's affecting our officers. There's reports of officers losing visitation with their kids because they had it on a weekend. Now they got to work the halls on a weekend. So now, you don't know how their marriage was before. Now they're losing visitation with their kids. People are losing houses because now they're sitting home. They don't have income coming in. So there's a lot of officers being affected personally. Operation-wise, we'll get to you on that, and we'll make sure we have a representative here to make sure we explain how it goes. But 18,314 people, and majority of our officers are in the halls. We know something's going on. We know something's wrong. It ain't no way we're getting all the supervision we need with that many people out there, and majority of our people in the halls. But we'll get more into that later. I'll just leave with. Actually, I want to address. You said overstaff is part of the problem. That's not the issue. These officers are never overstaffed. We actually need more field officers. We just gotta be able to promote and get them in there. I want to end it with 4 questions. I know you guys don't have to answer it, but I know there's field officers who are watching right now, and they would like to know probably. Will the officers who are sent home because they were unable to work in the halls return to the offices as well when their 60 days are up? Are they being notified when they're returning, or can they just be like, hey, my 60 days is up, I'm gonna show up to my office now? How many people are left for the second round? Because a lot of people, one more. And the hiring for the DSOs, how is that going in order to stop deployment?
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Hi, Tyreek. Welcome.
Good morning, everybody. I just got a couple questions because, like, maybe y'all answered these already, but my first question would be around choosing which staff is sent in, because I know like certain staff, certain officers are injured, or they don't have the physical like things to actually be able to go inside of a juvenile hall and be impactful. So how do y'all choose that? Because I would hate for like some officers who can't physically keep up with the youth to be inside of there. And then secondly, around like caseloads, right? Because you said like people are being deployed from the field, but they have caseloads. Are y'all notifying those people on their caseload that they no longer have this probation officer anymore? Because I think like, especially like when you're talking about probation officers, some are more rigorous, some of them want different things from each other, and now people are sitting there and wondering, will it be the same or will it be different, or are they going to the same type of people? I don't know. It's just questions around those two things.
I wrote those down and we'll go back to them after we get through public comment. Thank you.
Good morning. Sorry. Good morning. My name is Rochelle Mesco. I'm the director of the Juvenile Justice Clinic at Loyola Law School, where we represent youth ensnared in the juvenile delinquency system. I know there's a lot of talk today about deploying probation officers to the halls. I'm here today to comment on the lack of, well, what I am told is the lack of staffing at the halls. Defense attorneys within my office and our legal team, including the certified law students, have waited up to 3 hours to be able to see our clients. And this is just in the last couple weeks. Multiple people on our team have been told we can't see them on certain days. We have been told, quote, you can wait, but I doubt you'll be able to see them. And literally the information that was provided to us is that there's not enough folks to be able to walk us over to the pods, which were, at that point, we were told only one attorney was there. And there's, I believe, 4 pods that were possibly open. There's interview rooms. In other states and the US Supreme Court have deemed this amount of wait time unconstitutional. It blocks our youth from being able to have adequate access to their attorneys and courts, the court system. Youth that are within the juvenile halls are also overrepresented, obviously in terms of Black and Brown youth, but also youth with learning disabilities, youth with exposure to trauma, and youth with mental health issues that require constant, frequent visitation with their attorneys and legal teams, and to deprive them of these specifically vulnerable youth of access to their attorneys deprives them of access to relationships, meaningful relationships, access to knowledge about what's happening in their cases, and access to actual movement towards rehabilitation. Now, I know that we're being told that it's an issue with staffing. However, there have been times where we go into the chapel at Los Padrinos and about 4 to 5 staff are just sitting there chit-chatting. Now, I know everybody deserves a break. I know everybody deserves to chit-chat while on the job. However, when it comes to constitutional rights, lack of staffing should not be ever used as an excuse. And the Supreme Court has actually ruled on this issue, saying that wait times longer than 45 minutes is actually unconstitutional. So I'd love to know what the response is to that.
Well, my first response is thank you for bringing it to our attention.
I think we're going to try to go through all of the comments. Thank you. And then give you a chance to respond. I'm sorry that makes it hard to remember all the questions, but I'll help you do that. So yes, thank you, Raquel. We're going to go to the online comments and start with Lena Mallett. Lena, thank you, Deputy Chief Epps. Lena, we're going to unmute you.
Thank you. Lena Mallett with the Children's Defense Fund. Your reflections of the way that reassignments have supposedly had little impact on field services feels deeply, deeply disingenuous to me, especially when we're hearing otherwise, that young people can't get in touch with their PO, that pre-plea reports aren't getting done on time, that young people and adults alike aren't getting referrals to essential mental health and substance use services that impact their freedom, their livelihood. And the fact that there are 5 officers in the South Central office tasked with caring for roughly 1,500 people is astonishing to me. That's a caseload of over 300 human beings, likely with varying high needs. This tactic has failed in its short-term application, and there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that its long-term ambitions of achieving staffing compliance with BSCC's minimum standards will fall short. introducing strangers who likely have no interest in building relationships with the young people is contrary to the most basic foundational youth development principles that emphasize trust building and long-term invested mentorship. There's no way that the 59 hours of general training is sufficient to respond to the needs of young people who are in custody. So I guess my question is, what is the real long-term plan that the department is considering? And I would urge that if they were truly concerned about long-term solutions, that you would be advocating collaboratively for decarceration and pushing the county to realize the full funding and implementation of supportive networks and resources that would be ready to receive young people in their reentry journey in the ways that this department has failed over and over again.
Thank you. And sorry, I'm going to pull up my list here. We'll go next to Tanya Ibanez.
Yes, good morning and thank you. I'm looking at the report that was attached to the agenda, and I wasn't sure if I was reading it right. It shows that 136 full-duty field staff from the Adult Investigative Service Bureau was removed or transferred. And I'm just wondering, what is the total amount of employees working for the Adult Investigative Service Bureau? Same question for the juvenile. I see that 63 full-duty field staff from the Juvenile Field Service Bureau was transferred. And again, what is the total amount, the total number of field staff working for the Juvenile Field Services? And then, and part of the question that I also had, could you give us some more information of what kind of contacts in the community were eliminated? What does that entail? When a probation officer is not able to make a contact with the community, what can the community expect the outcome of that to be? I mean, is this visits to the probationer? Is this visits to the schools? Is it visits to the I mean, I don't really know what that means. So that's pretty much it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. We're going to go next to James Maddox. James, we'll unmute you. James, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I can hear you now. You can begin.
Okay, terrific, terrific. James Maddox, my question is really to Ms. Cotton, and she said something that I would probably reflects my naivete. Why would someone, she was talking about staffing and that people would walk into the probation office just because. I'm just curious why anyone who has no why would I walk into a probation office? I'm just curious on who those people are. That was it.
Thank you, James. Next up, we have Lupe Ross. Ms. Ross, we're going to unmute you.
Okay, hello.
Yes, you can start.
I have some comments to make here. I know for a fact that I've called the court and asked to speak to the PO that's assigned to the court, only to find out that he's been deployed. The one time I was able to get through to him, he said he was having difficulty getting through to the RFA process where this has to be approved before camp detainees can be released, and that's a problem. The other thing is that the POs in the camp are there 2 to 3 days only, and most of the time they're in school, so they can't talk to you. By the time they get off their shift, they've done other supervisorial duties, and they can't talk to us. So how are we supposed to reach anybody? The RFA people, I went through their administration because it was a month and a half before I was able to contact anybody to get an RFA process started. They had the same issue, that they did not have a field officer that was assigned to the case to move the case along. So even though Part A was completed, Part B couldn't be completed because it had to go through the field officer and there was none assigned. I've mentioned before that I called the probate locator. It's going on, I think, like 5-6 weeks. And periodically I call back and they still haven't found who the field officer is. Okay. I think it's important for us to find out what the probation policy is with the RFA policy. The policy for the RFA, I think it's critical for us to understand what that process is because it drags on and on. And that's not fair to our family members because they're sitting there waiting for this process to be completed and it's not. Thank you. I have other comment, but I'll wait till the end of the meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Ross. We'll go next to Taliba Coffee. Ms. Coffee, we'll unmute you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can begin.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So I can personally speak as a ASCOT Service Court Officer, employee, deputy probation officer, on the impact of how this reassignment has affected my peers as well as myself. I've personally reached out to Howard Wong as well as Chief Epps on my concern and have not received any responses. But just looking at the numbers of the form that was submitted to the POC and the ASCOT numbers, when you add up each deputy under the directive, there's a minimum of 6 cases per week, and that's been the past practice. So when you add those numbers up, how many cases we do a week, and you look at what has been presented to the POC, there's 84 cases a week that are being unaccounted for, that are being pushed over to the people that are left behind. So that's an issue. And then you're going to redeploy some more people that, you know, is another issue. Another thing that I want to point out is the DPO2s are the only ones that are tasked with doing 2 different jobs. We're working in the halls and the field. And how is that equitable and fair? The last thing that I want to point out is, again, by law, Court Rule 4.4111, these reports are mandated by law. And I believe the department needs to answer that. As far as the next round is going, it's going to be a lot of old people because it was done by seniority. So you're going to have a lot of old staff going in. So, and that concludes what I want to say. But thank you for your time.
Thank you for calling, Ms. Coffee. I saw Jazara had her hand up, and if you want to, your hand went down. If you could raise it again, we'll call on you. But we'll go next to Helen Eigenberg. Helen, we're going to unmute you.
I just want to say I'm so grateful for the POC Commission and the chance that we're able to speak to these things. And I am grateful to Chief Epps and her staff. And I know this is a really hard situation. But I have to tell you, in listening to all this, I'm just a community member in Los Angeles. And when I listened to all this, I know that we scrambled to fill this understaffing in the facilities so that the BSCC wouldn't shut down Barry J or LP. And so we moved folks from the field to the facilities. It feels, when I'm listening to all this, I'm like, wow, this is simple math. If we have a hole somewhere and we fill it from another area, now we're leaving a hole there. And I'm hearing from public defenders and things that I'm reading that this is having a huge impact on people. And even just listening to comments right now. So I guess I'm just really commenting that my heart is aching because I'm just wondering, when are we truly going to get it together and put our youth front and center and give them the care that they need and deserve? And thank you. I appreciate being able to say something.
Thank you, Helen, and I'm glad you're back, Jazara. Thank you for re-raising your hand. So we'll go to Ms. Holliday next.
Everybody, my name is Jazara Holiday with Youth Justice Coalition. Youth are being affected by the negligence of you all system, and it's been going on for a long time. I was negatively impacted by the worst PO, someone who was only interested in incarceration. But anytime I needed her help getting connected to resources, a job, a new school, she never answered or helped. And I can only imagine the impact that she has had on kids in the last 5 years. How many youth have fallen into the system because they weren't provided the resources? Cases being delayed for a year or two with no real plan for the youth. Just push them back out there and wait for them to fail again so you could keep them.
Sarah, did you cut off or are you finished with your comment?
Yes, ma'am, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I believe that's the end of public comment. I'm going to read the questions that I have, and maybe if commissioners, you can listen and make sure I didn't miss anything. So I have I'm sorry, I had this pulled up and now I don't. How do you choose what staff are brought in? What if staff cannot go into the halls in particular because they don't have the physical ability to do it? Will the officers who have been sent home be able to return to the office? How will they be notified of that return? How many people are left for the second round? I think we heard that related in the last comment as well. How well is hiring going for DSOs so we can stop deployment? How are people on the caseloads in the field notified if their DPO is being deployed? The question about lawyers waiting up to 3 hours to see their clients. Ms. Ibanez's question, I actually think, is what was directly addressed by Commissioner Kakani before, which is what is the total number of employees versus the number of deployed staff. So I think we'll hold on that one and make it an official data request. What contacts in the field were eliminated? Why would anyone walk into a probation office? And then questions about RFA policy, which to me means resource family application. I don't know if there is another meaning of that acronym. Is that it? Okay, great. Did I miss anything? Yes.
There was something around people finding out 2 days before, right before that they were needing to go into the halls.
Yes.
First, I'll start with the issue of the excessive weight. So I've heard a number of things today that have obviously not been elevated to the proper place for review. So if you have a pen, so there is a ombudsman assigned to probation. So we'd like to review these. So I need you to submit a citizen's complaint form, or you can call the ombudsman to put your complaint in by phone. And this goes for anyone on the phone, anyone on the commission. If there's a concern regarding the timeliness of reports that people aren't being seen, we'd like to give it the proper review that it deserves. Because sometimes there is a backstory, maybe not, but we need to seriously have a timely way to look at these concerns so that the citizens of LA County get the proper response in the proper time, so that our kids are getting what they need if there is a deficit or if the need's being addressed, that we can respond in a timely manner to say, hey, this is what's going on here. The ombudsman's number is 1-877 822 3222. So I'm asking that if there are concerns or allegations that needs are not being met, processes involving our youth are being skipped, this is the youth ombudsman's number. And if you can call that number, we'd appreciate it. I will also be leaving the email from the ombudsman's office with the POC, but the email is ombudsman@probation.org. www.lacounty.gov. This would give us an opportunity to properly receive any information that's of a concern and give it the proper review and respond accordingly. So on the issues of deployment, I'm going to defer to the deputy directors to take these things. So I will say this before I yield the floor. There's a number of perfect storms. We would love to say, hey, we got this many staff and this many people can be deployed in this many places. But there are a number of factors impacting the number of people that we have to deploy, processes that have to be worked through to get to who we can deploy and how we can deploy them. So these things are in continual assessment and review. We do have our first group of deployed staff returning to their offices. There have been some exemptions made based on discussions with the deputy directors. The deputy directors are completing the plan where we will have offices, field offices open the first and third Saturday of every month because we realize we need to expand the service times given the number of staff that we have. We are aware, we have openly stated to the courts, to our AB 109 partners, in the last meeting, we're aware that things are thin, the number's thin, but we're making it, and we expect these numbers to increase. We're looking at staff that can be accommodated. Some of them have already returned to work. We expect others to return in the percentage that we can accommodate people, but that's a whole nother issue. We're transferring staff from juvenile services where the caseloads are smaller, and there hasn't been quite an in-depth assessment. We can consolidate some caseloads there, bring those caseload numbers up. It's hard to justify to probation officers or to justify to the public when you have caseloads that might hit 45 or 50 in juvenile, but you're getting it handed to you in adult where caseloads are 100, 150, 200, 1,000 in bank caseloads. How do you make the justification? So we're looking there critically to make the necessary adjustments and spread the love throughout the department to make sure that we're catching those gaps. I'll openly say sometimes it's like catching ants in a colander, but we're doing the best we can and we continue to, as I said, assess, look forward to resources returning back to the department and being able to adequately allocate those resources. So we're not saying that this isn't a difficult place to be in or a difficult decision, but we are saying that we're working on it, we're continuing to look at it, and we will have ongoing resolutions and we will come back and report. So thank you, and I look forward to receiving the information so we can assess any of the complaints we heard today or situations of concern from our commissioners and members of the public. Thank you.
Take care of all your questions.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
So I think, how do you choose which staff are?
So we go in seniority order, the order of seniority. We did reverse seniority. So, and if they can't, then that goes through our HR, through what we call a IPM process, where they look at if your inability to go in is compatible, the note that you may have from a medical doctor to see if your restrictions are compatible with going into a facility, and if they are not, then another course of action is taken with that process. And some of it includes, I think, was alluded to earlier, home accommodations until we're able to, meaning that some officers are sent home until we're able to ascertain what the next step should be. How are families, I think the question was, how are the families notified that they're getting a new probation officer? Okay. The probation officer that receives our directive, probation officer that receives the new case has a time limit. Normally it's within the first 30 days they have within a transfer to notify that family. We are asking for that to be expedited, but as has been pointed out, given the numbers that we have, we've asked them to do it immediately. But our policy does read within the first 30 days of transfer. So again, with numbers being thin, some of it is probably happening faster than others. Again, we're working on processes to make sure that if we can put a team around just making those calls to let families know to do better in that area. I think there was also a question about when staff are notified. And I think Ms. Epps alluded to the perfect storm. We believe we have a full list of staff ready to go. We start calling and we learn there are other issues surrounding that. We have to move into a next group of staff. So we were not very artful when we first started because we were, again, trying to ensure that we had appropriate staffing in our juvenile halls as well as staffing in the field. So some staff did receive some late phone calls. I think the second round went better. I think we've gotten better. This round will be even better. But we did have some issues with notifying people pretty late. We do understand that it did impact people, as was stated in public comment, where folks had to make some adjustments to their schedules to be available for training. We did explain, and the chief did put out information, as well as Chief Epps, that we are in an emergent situation and these things are changing daily, not only for our line staff, but for our executive level staff, bureau chiefs, directors, as well as myself. I was called into Ms. Epps' office and directed down to the juvenile hall and given 24 hours to do that. So it is impacting all of us across the board where we're needed. We're getting deployed to respond to ensure, again, that our young people and the folks under our care are getting the services that they need and that they deserve to receive. So some of it we've gotten great at. We plan to get better. We have strategies, again, that we are charting out to make sure that we can see staff, but we don't. And I heard from one of the commissioners that we may have indicated, and if it was my statement, and certainly Mr. Wong and Mr. Harone share my sentiments, this has not been an easy process, and it has impacted our staff as well as the people that we serve. And we recognize that, and we are, again, putting things in place to make sure that we can mitigate that. So it hasn't been something that was easy or something that has not impacted folks.
Can you talk about the delay in meeting with lawyers and maybe the delay in RFA?
Again, I think Ms. Epps put that out. That has not come to my level. We've had RFA that I met with that team, the bureau chief with that team, and it was my understanding that things are moving forward as planned with that. I'd like to know more about it. It has not been elevated to my level, that we have issues there. That is a long, laborious process, and it should not be held up because of deployments. We have enough staff that are trained in that to keep that going, as well as a manager that is still there on site with that. As far as court officers, they were exempt from deployment. They do remain, we have remained fully staffed on the juvenile side in juvenile court. So I'd like to hear more about any issues that we have around that. That has not been elevated to the appropriate level either.
And Howard, maybe you could say why someone would walk into a probation office.
So on the 109 side, it might be someone that needed resources, someone that got released, might be a court walkover, and they'll walk into the probation office and be met by our SDPO or OD or the DPO that's on site there.
So much for that, Commissioner. Is there any more questions? Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. Is there any more questions or comments that you have? Yes.
Just one, I guess, request. When we visited LP on the 11th, we were notified that morning, the entire morning shift in NNO had called out. And so folks were being pulled from different units, whatever it is. Once again, lack of consistency for the young people in terms of the adults who are supposed to care for them, monitor them. People who don't know their needs necessarily. So just wondering if we can get some updated data. You know, there was obviously this history of call outs and folks not wanting to, not being able to come in, not wanting to come in, fear of holdovers, whatever it is. Presumably a bunch of folks got held over that morning. So it would be great to get an update on call outs following this deployment and if that remains an issue. And then the second thing I just, again, wanted to, this is more of a comment. I think what we've repeatedly heard is that consistency is so important for these young folks in order to build relationships with anyone, whether it's the folks coming in to provide services, knowing that those folks are going to come in, knowing that they're going to be there on Tuesday on time, or whether it's with the POs who are charged with running their program, running the unit, getting them to school, meeting their needs, making sure they know what these young folks need. And so when you have new folks coming in every 60 days, or when you have folks calling out regularly, so having to pull and scramble from different places, when you have folks in the community who are now being confronted with new faces, people who don't know them, people who don't know their stories, an obligation to retell your story, relive that trauma, it just feels so short-sighted. And I think it was the second to last public comment, Helen just reminded me, and it feels important to rename, that we are really kind of forgetting who is at the center of all of this. And it's the young folks and also the adults and young people who are out in the community who have been placed in positions, probably by systems that had failed them before, to now be under the surveillance and control and monitoring of the probation department. And it just feels like we're just missing the point here, and we're missing the mark, and we're once again causing more harm than we are contributing to the success of the folks who are subject to these systems.
Commissioner Kakani, I just wanted to let you know I heard you about the request on the call outs, and I'll happily work with Deputy Chief Epps and Deanna Carlisle to have an update on those. Those have been really helpful reports to receive, so the leadership team can decide when they'd like to agendize that and get an updated report.
Thank you so much. Yes, Commissioner Sean Garcia-Reyes.
So I think there was one question that I did not hear an answer to, so I'll repeat it, which is, as I understand it, a number of people were sent home through this IPM process. I imagine their 60 days is coming up. Will they go back to their offices?
Actually, that is going to, I think we are going to reach out for another agenda item with HR, our human resources process for this, to answer that question.
So, sorry, what was the answer?
There's a process being placed.
So we're figuring it out?
Yes.
Okay.
Regarding placing these folks back on.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's another agenda item. I believe our HR folks will be speaking on that.
Okay. And then finally, I feel bad I forgot to bring this up earlier, right? That there have been reports that a shocking number of people have been sent home through the IPM process. And I think different people might have different ideas of what shocking is. But that is something we need data on so that we can put that into some perspective. I mean, I think if Los Padrinos is meeting minimum standards right now, this is the big issue that I feel the POC needs to make a priority. So this is a great start, but we're gonna need, over the next several meetings, some more iterative data requests to get really to the bottom of this. So this is a great start, but I would like to add also that our data requests include all similar data about people who are being sent home through the IPM process or for any other reason are not in their field offices, even if they're not being actually showing up in the juvenile halls on redeployment.
So would that be added? It's just going to be an agenda item. Okay, thank you. We will make sure to note to hopefully have that on the next meeting as an agenda item, yes?
And can you remind us what IPM stands for?
Interactive process meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Interactive process meetings? Okay. Yes, Commissioner Don.
I'm just going to make a comment here, more of a comment, and I know it's no secret to the executive leadership team, but this filtering, is a continuing problem. And I'm going to tell you, it's the supervisors and the managers and others that are holding this information back. And so when we're got the bureau chiefs here or the assistant chief or the chief, we want them to have answers and they're going, well, we didn't know about it. It's the filtering. And personally, I've said this for the last 21 years I've been doing this. We need to hold those people accountable if they're holding that information back and creating problems.
Thank you so much. Who's holding the information back?
Somebody at the lower levels between the supervisors and executive leadership team, it's not getting up there and it's always been that way.
Okay, thank you for that clarity for me and those that might not know. Any more comments or questions? Okay, with that, presenters, thank you so much for joining our panel today. And if there are no more comments or questions, we will move to a short break, 10 minutes. It's 11:40, so 10 minutes or 5 minutes? Okay, 10 minutes. 11:40, we will see you back here at 11:50. Thank you very much. So we're tabling, yeah. So go ahead and start now. Thank you so much, commissioners, for all being in your seats on time. It is now 11:51 a.m. and we will continue our meeting. So item number 6 has been tabled and we will move straight to item number 7. It is to hear a report from the Los Angeles Probation Oversight Commission, including a presentation on the POC's data dashboard.
Thank you, Chair Canales. I'll say a few things before we get into the dashboard presentation, which is like the most exciting thing I've had to report in a very long time in terms of the actual offerings that the POC is able to offer to the public. So we have been busy with the staff and work with the commissioners behind the scenes, including launching our 2024 inspections process. We've completed our inspection at Dorothy Kirby Center, and next up is Campus Kilpatrick, and then the following inspection will be Los Padrinos. We have decided that this year, different than in years past, we're going to be writing and publishing reports individually. So there will be a report for each institution at the end of the year, and then we'll compile it at the end of the year and publish it. But what that means is that there won't be as much delay in getting the reports out after the inspections. So the board and the public and you all, of course, will be, you're writing the inspections, but we'll be able to see them and share them along the way individually. We also are continuing our work on the spot inspections around substance use disorder programming and other programming. And I'd just like to reiterate my thanks to the commissioners for all of their time that they volunteer in order to conduct both the official inspections and those spot inspections. We also are working on a number of other reports related to data that we've received. I think you saw in the presentation earlier today exactly the kind of data that we're hoping for. There was that one slide that Director Hidon apologized for being busy. I was more just like really excited to see it around the racial breakdown of adults on probation. That's the kind of thing that our staff can ultimately turn into things that are digestible for the public in a way that we can look at some of the important statistics. And I'll just share one before I get launched into the conversation about the dashboard, which is that I had the opportunity to attend a program through the Vera Institute last week where they were discussing some racial disparities data in the jail population among adults. And not surprisingly, there are racial disparities in the jail data. I think everyone knows that. What was surprising is something that I think reiterates the need for what Donisha's team and the probation oversight in general is doing in terms of just straight up transparency about data. That is that the report was that among the jail population in Los Angeles County, approximately 30% of the population identifies as Black. That is extraordinarily disparate outcome because it's about 8% of the population in Los Angeles County of adults. What was highly impactful to me in seeing that slide is that the report that we just published around the demographics report, it's the first one listed under poc.lacounty.gov reports. You'll find it says demographics report. You'll see that among the juvenile hall population in Los Angeles County, the Black identified population is 37%, significantly higher or a more disparate impact among the juvenile population. So when we talked about this at our staff meeting, Donisha in about 10 seconds came up with a whole list of reasons why that might be. But it's certainly something that we should face and know and understand, and really an important piece of accountability. Because if something that we're doing, and by we, I mean the entire county, the whole system, is contributing to additionally disparate impact on Black children, then it's something that we should be addressing in our policy recommendations. And so I think that that is a perfect segue into what I will turn the mic over for Donisha to present, which is in what has become a very long-term project. I can't even tell you how long, like 2 years long, of the Probation Oversight Commission to turn the data that we receive on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis from the probation department into a public-facing data dashboard. So you all have been, if you wanted to, able to see the population data, the OC data, the OC spray, the pepper spray data, the racial and ethnic data for years. We attach it to every agenda. It is like a PDF that's very difficult to read. Now it is going to be, well, it is in a format that you can just click on our website and actually look not just at the data, but at trends and other information. So Danisha is going to walk you through all of this, but I want to say a couple of things. First, I want to start with gratitude for the probation department. We could not provide this data dashboard without the data provided by the department. And most of that data is provided voluntarily by the department. We have not had to subpoena it. We have not had to make formal requests for it. They send us the population statistics, they send us the OC spray statistics, and they do it regularly and timely. And because of that, we're able to turn that data around into a public-facing data dashboard. I will also say there is much work to be done. We have a budgeted team of 6 in the Probation Oversight Commission, 6 staff members. We have scrambled to have resources for additional folks to help us with this dashboard, but it would be very helpful and appropriate for eventually the probation department to be providing their own dashboard. I actually think you heard Deputy Chief Epps say today that there is some movement in that direction around providing direct access to data. I will be very happy the day that the Probation Oversight Commission can close down this dashboard because probation is providing it directly to the public. But in the meantime, we have a lot of really exciting things to report. And we look forward to your critical feedback about this dashboard. And I really mean that. I know I've like overemphasized how hard we've been working on it, but we want to know what works and what doesn't work for you and how we can improve it. And we really hope you use it. We hope that it's useful to our sister agencies in the county. We hope it's useful to parents and families. We hope it's useful to the media, and in particular useful as we look at ways that we can improve the way that we're doing business in the probation department, and that we can forward the principles of Youth Justice Reimagined through this work. So at this point, all of the data available is juvenile data, but someday soon, we hope it will also include adult data. So with that, I'm going to, with a huge amount of thanks to Danisha Smith and her team, turn this over to Danisha to walk you through really one of the biggest accomplishments of the Probation Oversight Commission so far, which is the public launch of our data dashboard.
Thank you, Wendy. And the credit doesn't only belong to me. This truly was a team effort. So thank you to everyone on the POC team. But as Wendy shared, we are pleased to announce the launch of the POC Data Dashboard, which is our new interactive tool providing public access to juvenile detention data in Los Angeles County. The data dashboard contains data from 2022 onwards and features critical insights into juvenile detention patterns, including the aggregate number of incarcerated youth, deployments of OC spray by probation officers, demographics of pre and post adjudicated youth, and that includes data on the age, ethnicity, and gender of youth, a breakdown of youth in juvenile halls by case status, and details on youth disposition to the Secure Youth Track facility. We've prepared this very short PowerPoint presentation to give you a high-level overview of the data that is accessible to you in the dash. Next slide, please. The data is broken into 4 main categories, which you'll see in the top navigation menu. Those are total population, population breakdown, OC spray, and age. This slide depicts the total population page. And within the total population view, you can aggregate the total number of youth across all facilities on a given day, including juvenile halls and the camps. The date query, or the slicer that you see in the upper right-hand corner, allows users to modify the date range to their preference. And that dashed line that you see running through the graph represents the total detained youth population in 2022, which was about 365 youth. And this particular view is useful for spotting population growth trends over time. Next slide, please. The population breakdown tab allows users to drill down and take a much more detailed look at the populations by facility type. This page has a sub-menu, which you can see on the right side of the screen underneath the Board of Supervisors names. That allows for additional filtering and sorting. This option includes looking at data by the case status, SYTF populations, and population ethnicity. Users can also select one or more facility names to compare and contrast data across different sites. Next slide, please. The OC spray dataset tracks the number of OC spray uses or deployments per month. The data can be viewed by incident type and location within the juvenile hall. The incident type refers to the probation department's categorization of the event that caused the deployment of the spray. Examples include fights and disruptive behavior. Location refers to where within the juvenile hall the OC spray was used. Examples may include the bathroom or a classroom. We have a glossary on our landing page that provides definitions for the terms here and additional context for what these terms mean. The OC spray data set is incredibly useful because it is a reminder that the department remains out of compliance with multiple board directives instructing the department to eliminate its use. The data reveals that since the 2019 board directive to end all OC spray usage, there have been a total of 779 incidents in 2022 and 2023 alone. Next slide, please. The age view allows users to see an aggregate breakdown of the youth ages across one or multiple facilities. This is important for monitoring trends and can help to inform the types of programming that should be available at the facilities. Next slide. We created a landing page, as I mentioned, for the dashboard on our website at poc.lacounty.gov that has more background information about the dash and contains several reference documents that users may find useful in helping them to navigate the dash and understand some of the terminology contained within the data set. This includes a timeline from 2020 to present that chronicles the various facility closures and population movements that have occurred over the past few years that, again, just provides additional context for interpreting the data. And as Wendy shared, this wouldn't have been possible without the probation department sharing the data with us. However, we believe this is just a starting point and that the department has access to much more robust data, and we look forward to continuing to work with the department to continue to grow and expand on the dashboard over time and to increase public transparency around what's happening in the facilities and to help all county stakeholders make data-informed decisions. Thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Can see why I'm so excited about this. Thank you. That's the end of my presentation for today. Thank you, Danisha.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Lewis.
One great job. Looks like so much information. So I'm happy, like really, because people can see and know and be educated on the things that are changing, that aren't changing, that need to be changed. I'm saddened and really, really angry because when I say this about the disparity of how many Black kids, Black men, Black women, like when I say it, it's taken in the wrong way. He's an angry Black man. And I get put in that box. But it's a fact. It's a fact. I go in, I know what our population percentage is in the state of California. I know what our percentage population is nationally. I know what our percentage population in carceral facilities are. I know what how we get sentenced to longer terms, sentenced to death more. I mean, it goes on and on and on, but I wish more people would amplify this because it seems like when it comes, it depends on the messenger sometimes, which I so miss some of the voices that we had of days past that were assassinated that could speak as moral compasses to our entire country. And so I'm really, really proud of the work that's been done to get this dashboard up and working for the public. And just, so I'm torn between those two feelings, but want to just thank you for all the effort and hard work to get this done and hope that the public that is listening, if you ever wonder why I'm so passionate or I go so hard, is because I was one of those little black boys that got ran over, crushed, and was meant to be destroyed in the system. And though I may not agree with everyone on how to approach this system, I'm here trying and doing everything that I possibly can to transform it in a way that's compassionate while using accountability to help our young people correct their moral compass, go home, and be the best version of themselves. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Lewis. Excellent statement. Anyone else? Okay, with that, Wendy, do we have any written or live public comments?
Thank you for that, Commissioner Lewis. Do we have any public comments? Anybody in the room? Public comment? Yes. Okay, great. James? We're going to unmute you.
Am I unmuted yet?
Yes, you are. You can
Oh,
begin.
terrific. I stumbled onto the website, onto the dashboard, and I was just, as you well know, I like data. I was just floored by it. Great job, Donisha and team. It's a great bond. It's a great project. And then for someone like me who likes to dig into data, great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, James. That means a lot, as you know. I appreciate it. Lupe Ross?
Hello again. Okay, I just had a couple of things to add on here. When it came to the restitution, some of us remember maybe a few years back when CDCR got caught up in a big scandal about restitution that the inmates were paying, and they took advantage of a loophole that was in their policy, and the restitution went into providing additional funding for the prisons, and the money did not go to the victims. So I think it's important for us to check and see, are there any loopholes in our policy where the way it's written up so that we can make sure that the victims are the ones that are receiving the restitution when they're entitled to it. The other thing is, I've heard several times being said that when probationers go into the probation office, there's either no probation officer there or the probation officer, the one that is there, he's got maybe 6 people in line. They're just signing in. The receptionist, whoever is at the reception area there, is saying, well, just sign in, it'll prove that you did come in. But then they weren't seen. I think, somebody needs to look into that. And I think Ms. Epps or somebody like that should be looking into verifying if this is really going on or not. And as far as the ad hoc, I would like to know who can we contact about the ad hoc committee? That's it for me.
Thank you, Ms. Ross. You can definitely contact me about the ad hoc committee. I'd be happy to share with you how we're progressing and if we're going to have any meetings where members of the public are invited. So I'd be happy to talk to you about that.
Thank you.
That's the end of our public comment.
Thank you so much. Commissioners, before we move on to agenda item 8, is there any further comments? Yes. Commissioner Lewis?
One question. Can I also volunteer for the Ad Hoc Committee on Programs?
Absolutely, right? Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So now moving on, agenda item number 8 is for matters not posted on the agenda to discuss or to place on a future meeting agenda for action. If you'd like to provide a public comment on the next item for general public comment, please raise your hand now on WebEx. If you are in the room, you can approach the front of the room and get in line. Commissioners, do you have any announcements or items you would like placed on a future agenda? Commissioner Meredith.
It's going to tie into what we had earlier about having the unions here to present their points of view. But I also want to point out we have a lot of hardworking staff. Unfortunately, 2 of those people died in the line of duty, and that kind of gone without recognition. And this is National Law Enforcement Memorial Week. So I just wanted to acknowledge the passing of DSO Michael Walls on April 20th, 21 in the line of duty at Central Juvenile Hall, and Group Supervisor Knight's Arnold Garcia on April 5th, 1994 at Dorothy Kirby. And just want to recognize that we do have hardworking staff, but I'd like to hear from the unions on the future agenda item.
Thank you so much for addressing that, Commissioner Meredith. It's very much appreciated. And I would like to make sure on the agenda item, because we did tell participants that we would have community collaborative court on the agenda, and then also some data on that we were looking into on violations and new arrests. I think we have some notes there, so we'll go over those afterwards, right? Okay, so.
Sorry, can I just make one request?
Yes.
Sorry, I know that item number 6 was tabled, I imagine, for our next meeting. Is that right? And it's limited to updates on spot checks by the BSCC. But it's not like probation doesn't know what they're out of compliance with or what they've been out of compliance with. So while updates on spot checks by the BSCC would be great, it would also be great if they could just independently provide updates, again, related to staffing, updates related to programming. Again, this April 11th visit that I made with Dr. Gongoro was wildly illuminating and disappointing, coming off the heels of magically being deemed suitable for the confinement of young people again, where in fact like 8 hours of programming on the calendar were non-existent. Forward-thinking journals appeared on the calendar, I'm sorry, for April 22nd, not 11th, 8 times. And every single unit that we went to had no idea what we were talking about. They didn't know what forward-thinking journals was. None of the young people knew, none of the staff knew, but it's still listed as 8 hours of programming. So that's just an example. And so it would really be great if they independently provided some accounting, some data for whether young folks were making it to school, whether, you know, as it relates to call outs and staffing ratios, as it relates to programming and rec. Another thing that all of the young folks reported at LP were that they weren't getting rec every single day. It was very inconsistent. So that's my request as like an add-on to item number 6.
Thank you, Commissioner Kakani. And I think the intent is the June meeting at the latest, and possibly a town hall between now and the June meeting. So I'll make sure to write out what you've just said for the leadership team so that they can adjust the agenda item as appropriate.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Commissioner Kakani, about the outside rec. That's very important with the weather clearing up. Yes, Commissioner Sean Garcia-Lays.
So also on well, I just want to second what she's saying and really encourage, if possible, when we're preparing for that meeting, I would love to find out more about that journaling and that program. My gut reaction when I saw that on the calendar was that it was absurd and transparent attempt to hide the lack of programming. And it was one of the things I was most frustrated with the BSCC, that they took that at face value. But I would like to know if I'm wrong in that initial assumption and that there is actually something of value there. But it struck me as being a pretty transparent attempt at paper compliance and not a real attempt at helping young people rehabilitate. So if we could really try and get them to talk specifically about that when this agenda item comes up again. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, this forward-thinking journals, did it have a director name on there or anything?
There were no other specifics on the on the month calendar or on the daily calendar.
Okay.
It just forward-thinking journals.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. Yes, Commissioner Lewis?
So Forward Think Journals is a cognitive behavioral intervention. It's evidence-based. We're actually training our staff to do it. It goes along the lines of DBT, like seeking safety, thinking for change, which again, we're also having all of our credible messengers trained in. I would love to just have all of our credible messengers, since it's such a, just do it at LP. Like, we have 7 subcontractors through a BSCC contract that go in on Saturdays to run programs in Barry J. 7 subcontractors, from yoga to music to art. To build these programs out, it's a great partnership with probation would make it so much easier to put programs in. Like, we're subcontracting from a BSCC grant that, as a community-based organization, we utilize to run programs. And it's very easy. The hardest part, you know what the hardest part is?
Understanding forward-thinking journals, I think, right now, for me, because I still don't get it.
So what it is journaling that talks about both the trauma and if you have substance abuse. Like, you can Google it. You can Google it. There's trainings. Like, trust me, I have a whole calendar, and I want to know, what do we train our credible messengers in? Because I would like to see, in our listening sessions a week ago with our young people that have come home, we do Thinking for Change in the office. And I asked, what's the difference between Thinking for Change that's taught by a therapist that's inside the facilities and our guys out here, our women out here?
Mhm.
And the youngster said, I can relate to them. It's different. Same message, different messenger. And so, and this is from the young people. And so I'm like, okay, we just get everybody trained in this. All of the DBT and CBIs, we get them trained, and we just run all of these programs and get more people to run programs. The greatest barrier is not the training or the willingness of people to do it. It's getting in the facilities now.
Okay, so the block of 8 hours for forward-thinking journals, was that for?
It's supposed to be 1 hour though.
No, but it's in 8 different units for an hour.
Okay,
So I'm
so
saying it's like
8
8
hours,
hours of
1 hour
programming
block.
combined. I think about 28 hours of programming labeled as forward-thinking journals for the month. And I'm not disputing what you're saying, Commissioner Smith. Yes, sorry. So sorry. I'm not sorry. All I'm saying is that that's great that there are folks who know how to do it. Nobody in the facility knew how to do it, and nobody knew what it was.
And the youth did not know what it was. So that's the problem that I'm trying to connect of how we can fix it.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Lewis. Sorry. That came from.
Poor Sam. At first I, okay.
That's what I'm gonna call you, but sorry.
Okay, great. Well, that is a very great issue that you brought up, Commissioner Kakani, because it seems like we can somehow help to facilitate, to streamline this process that will end up being beneficial for the youth and the facility in general. Okay, so is there any more comments? If not, I think we will go ahead and move on to agenda item number 9 now. And that is an invitation for members of the public to address the commission on items not on the agenda. Wendy, please facilitate public comment.
Thank you. If there are folks in the room who'd like to give public comment, I welcome you to come up to the podium, and we'll let you begin there. And then we'll also take public comment virtually if you want to raise your hand on WebEx, or if you're calling in, dial *3 on your phone. Anybody in the room want to make public comment? Great.
Wait, oh yeah, it is on. Good morning. I'm back again. I'm Tyreek with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition. Just really want to express the urgency to help the youth. I know like Commissioner Lewis said, we could bring the credible messengers here and really hear from them here, because they have the best experience. They have that unbiased opinion, and they're in there really working with these kids on a daily basis and getting insight that we may not hear from probation. And they doing all it, and then they also were once youth who were in these facilities and seen how they've grown and changed. So I think it's just important to see if we could have some time at some point hear from the credible messengers here on this body, because I think it's important. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Julio. I'm with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition. I'm a formerly incarcerated youth. I want to speak on behalf on the item that got passed for the next meeting. I just want to express a little bit of my vulnerability while being inside. 10 years ago, the contraband, I feel like, nothing has changed, and we need to figure out a solution on how we can make this change and working with the people that work inside these juvenile halls and these youth. Because it's just I don't think nothing's changed. In fact, I think it probably got worse. And these kids, we all shit the same, piss the same. We're this could be our kids, and I mean, we need to find a solution. We got all these people bringing in this contraband. Except credible messengers, and these credible messengers are in play with figuring out how to work with the youth. We just need to find a solution. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, Julio. Mr. Bell?
All right, I won't be long. I just want to reiterate I know the department was a little wishy-washy with their answer when it came to the people that was sent home and them returning back to work. I just want to make sure that you guys really hone in on that and and ask questions like, are they trying to be reclassified as well? That's a concern that they're having as well. Are they trying to reclassify them? Will they be able to go back to their offices? Because these are guys who may have worked the halls 20 years ago. I'm injured right now because I don't move like I did when I was 30 years old. And now you got these 60-year-olds coming into the halls asked to perform what 20-year-olds do. And it's not fair because they did that already. And they're good at their job in the field. They shouldn't have to worry about being reclassified or not being able to go back to work. I just really want you guys to really look into that and focus on that. And also, good job, Ms. Canal, for running the system.
Good job for you, Ms.
You made Commissioner Canales' day. Okay, I don't see any more people in the room, so we're going to go to virtual participants, and we'll start with Adrina.
I couldn't help but to reflect on the past to where we're at now. Last year on Mother's Day, no probation staff bothered to show up to work. I remember my son calling home upset, at the same time expressing his gratitude towards his counselor, who was the only one who showed up to do her job. Through her, he was able to contact home to wish me a happy Mother's Day. This was during the time period when kids were forced to use the restroom on the floor of their cells due to staffing issues, a time where my son's education was stripped away from him, a time of complete dehumanization. I remember a year ago today receiving news of the death of Brian Diaz, the distress and torment I felt phoning the juvenile halls and being placed on hold to inquire of my child's well-being. A dark time where probation officers simply did not care. They didn't even care to check on your kids and treated families very disrespectfully. When all visits were canceled without notification, forcing us to drive hours just to refuse us access to our children. I hope this Mother's Day is not a repeat of last year's, and if probation officers cannot own up to their obligations, then stop lying to the BSCC and admit failure. Being deceitful doesn't solve anything except will cause the department more problems and more accountability. My son transferred out of Los Padrinos and is in Barry J, where he has access to programs in school. I want to thank ARC for their work and efforts in helping our youth. Although my son is getting help now, I can't help but wonder about all the kids left at Los Padrinos, where most juveniles are housed. In just 1 month, my son earned 14 certificates and from straight C's went back to A's and B's, showcasing the differences between two facilities. It feels like county and prison, like a grooming of the kids from a county prison to a county jail to a prison. I also want to thank Ms. Johnson at Barry J. She's amazing, and I could tell she cares greatly about the youth. I enjoy her town hall meetings, which were not implemented at Los Padrinos until recently. I've attended many meetings from Mrs. Johnson, even when
Adrena, I'm sorry
probation.
to cut you off, but that's your
Okay,
time. Thank you
thank
so much for calling in. We're going to go next to Oscar Baruman. Oscar, can you hear me?
Good afternoon.
Yes, you can begin.
Um, Thank you. I share Commissioner Kakani and Commissioner Garcia Leyes' concern whether or not the juvenile halls are complying simply on paper or whether they're complying in fact. And this is specifically to the staffing requirements because I would hope that the commission would also look at not just the raw numbers of meeting the minimum number of staff, but whether those numbers are enough to be able to house the youth securely. For example, on the November 3rd escape, one of the last line of defense was a deputy probation officer that was on light duty, and that's the last line of defense. And now going in on this second round of deployments, are those deputies, are they also on light duty? Because as we've heard, the second round of deployment are going to include more senior DPOs. So I just like if the commission could look into the substantive numbers, not just the hard numbers as just another body. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Teresa Longoria.
Hello?
Yes, you can begin. Thanks, Teresa.
Okay, I may go over the 2 minutes, but if not, I'll continue and to speak on item 9. So it's item 8. So I worked several years in the hall.
I'm sorry, I'm going to restart your time, but we're on item
Okay.
9. This is general public comment. We don't
Okay,
take public comment on item 8.
Oh, okay, so a matter is not posted?
We don't take public comment on matters not posted. It's not an agenda item. It's just a chance for commissioners to list agenda items for future meetings. We're currently on public comment, agenda item number 9. So you'll have 2 minutes.
Okay, all right, thank you. I believe that the BOS has created a real big old mess, and they're expecting the field deputies to clean it up. So they appointed Mr. Chief Rosa without our knowledge, and they're expecting, we weren't even aware that he was sworn in as our chief. I don't think he has a true grasp of how our department is running or the complete chaos that his leadership has created, especially with the superior courts. As sworn peace officers, we have to abide by our current laws and statutes, and I am outraged that my colleagues are being punished and sent home to burn their time because they fall under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And we have plenty of court-ordered reports to do and court-ordered clients to supervise. And our bureau chief should be subpoenaed. So I don't know if you can add that as an agenda item. They should be subpoenaed by the courts to explain why our court reports are not being submitted at all due to deployment. The continuances are not the answer, and they're just backlogging our court system. Our ADA protected officers who are not deployed, they're sitting at home right now. And this is the most unethical executive managerial decision I have ever seen in my career. Additionally, does our chief realize that HIPAA laws have to be protected with his employees and for our clients? I'm just asking, can you fight for your employees' rights? And I think that our department should be able to vote our chief in or out. Our current leadership has failed to abide by the Peace Officer Bill of Rights, and these peace officers, these deputy probation officer field deputies are being sent home because they need medical accommodations, and they've done their work extremely well in the field. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. We did have Tawhida Shakur with their hand up, but I don't see that hand anymore. So if you could raise your hand again, if you'd like to speak, please do so. And we'll go next to James Maddox. James, can you hear me?
Now, can you hear me?
Yes, you can begin.
Okay. I don't know if this would be appropriate, but I would think that I would appreciate them, you agendizing the attendance of the various union representatives at the next meeting. I would like to hear what they have to say. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, James. Next up, we'll go to a call-in user, your call-in user number 8, and your number, I believe, starts with 866. So you're going to have to dial *6 to unmute yourself. You can do so, please.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. This is Mel, and Executive Director Julie, and I just wanted to call and thank you. I recognize that every month or every meeting, rather, you do your best, or at least it appears you do your best to provide a balanced conversation and a balanced approach to this collaboration that is established. I only ask that if the commissioners would follow your lead and do the same. In my experience, there's only been approximately 2 commissioners that provide a balanced conversation, and the reason why I'm always talking about that is because I'm on several boards, whether it's Metro, Advisory, Access, HOA, my fraternity, shout out to the Noops. I'm on several boards, and in doing so, we have an oversight. And oversight doesn't just mean pounding down on people. It means uplifting the positivity while addressing whatever's negative. And I'm not dismissing the malfeasance that have taken place. I will never defend that. However, there's so much more positive that's out here that we're doing. And it would be helpful if the commissioners collectively could acknowledge that. And at some point, you have to take your foot off the neck. At some point, you have to take the thumb off the foreheads. And I just ask that we can have a more global and collective, collaborative, balanced conversation. That's all. And again, thank you, Ms. Julian.
Thank you. We'll go next to another call-in user. Call-in user number 20. Your number starts with 62. You dial *6 to unmute yourself.
Good morning.
You're calling. Yes, we can hear you now. Please begin.
Okay, so Los Angeles system, I would like to hear from the Youth Coalition to your working expense. I see the data unbalanced from attendance. I'm concerned about the care and food and nutrients for the kids' daycare. Also on the month of May, during this 18 months of my child being separated from families and myself, I have not quite bonded, so I believe it's uncrafted programs where they have received for families. It's not in compliance with programs for the children in schools are not really impacting as what I have no clear view of what's really going on for the development as of my child in there. I believe the social circles at the age where are they placed with the other youth. They should be at the development stage of group, meaning their age group. I will want them to understand that learning from different developments of age group could really impact the children, and also to understand the timeline. Also, we have a few timeline is going by quick. It feels like 1,000 years, but honestly, I would like to ask a question. Why is the population of 350 to 650 just rises throughout up and down? Instead of that, I would like to understand that Why not help the family and the youth throughout the data rate instead of putting these programs that are not really impacting on the economic health for the future? This is a waste of tax money. As a teacher, as a nurse, it's very unhealthy for even for the employers, for POs. It's very unhealthy for the youth. They work wrong hours. It's hard for the community, and also spraying and also disciplining them. As a mother, I wouldn't want to spray my kid or even spank them. It's just, what is life for? I would like to have better rights. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think our last comment is from Taliba Coffee. Ms. Coffee? Okay. That's it? All right, that's the end of public comment. Okay, Ms. Coffee, you can, thank you for raising your hand again. I'll start your time whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm ready. Thank you. I would like to ask the POC, I know it might have been a year ago where you had a forum where you spoke to the actual staff, member, the line staff that do the job. I would ask, I don't know if that can be added to the agenda to discuss having a day where we can come in and speak to you so you can understand exactly what's going on within the department. And that's it.
Thank you. I know I really enjoyed those employee town halls, and I think the commissioners did as well. So I'll talk to the leadership team about the possibility of rescheduling one of those. And that's the end of public comment for today.
Thank you all so much for joining us and for sharing your comments. I just want to give a quick reminder to the commissioners that we were invited on May 30th to the Resource Fair in Santa Monica. And also Sunday, Mother's Day weekend, I will be out there. Well, I was invited by Anti-Recidivism Coalition from 1 to 3. We'll be at the different facilities with gift bags for the moms. And so Adrina, I know she called in and made that comment, and hopefully that's able to make a little bit of a difference. And thank you all for your feedback and suggestions for next agenda items, all very important. As a quick reminder, be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also at LAC, well, LA County POC. To receive reminders about our upcoming meetings, visit our website at poc.lacounty.gov to subscribe to our email list. And now, commissioners, can I have a motion to adjourn today's meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn today's meeting.
Thank you so much. Do we have a second? Second. Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Kakani and seconded by Commissioner Lewis. Commissioners, please unmute yourself and vote with one voice.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motions carries unanimously. It is now 12:39 p.m. and we are adjourned. Thank you so much. Thank you.
What a great